As I walked through the door, I never imagined my world would collapse in an instant. My wife, tangled with another man, shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Confusion gave way to anger as I discovered a trove of hidden emails and love letters revealing their sordid affair. The plot thickened, stolen funds and plans for a new life together. My despair transformed into a relentless quest for truth. Hidden cameras, secret recordings, and sleepless nights became my new reality. The climax? A dramatic confrontation at a lavish party exposing their betrayal to everyone. This isn't just infidelity. It's a labyrinth of lies and revenge. Brace yourself for my story. Are you ready to witness the fallout? "Don't forget we need to be at Carol and Benny's by 6 tonight," Kelly said to me. "Sorry, let me start over. I'm James Barrymore, Kelly's husband. She's the amazing, caring wife I married 6 years ago. You got it? Good." I was a bit annoyed and replied, "No problem, sweetheart. I just need to take some papers to Leonard before he leaves on his trip." "I won't be gone more than an hour," I added. Kelly peeked around the bedroom door, her 5'4" frame leaning casually against the door. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, and I noticed her bright blue eyes sparkling with mischief. Oh, and by the way, Kelly actually has rich auburn hair, not blonde. I can't figure out why she keeps dyeing it. Sure, I like blonde hair, but I also love her natural color. "That's what you always say, Jim," she replied, cutting me off. We were talking about the papers, not her hair. "I'm getting ready now," she said. "I want your promise you won't get distracted talking about work like you always do." Great. Now she broke my focus, just like I had interrupted her. I could see the annoyed look on her face when she used my full name. It was her way of showing she was upset. "What did you expect?" "I was daydreaming," I sighed. "I don't know why we spend so much time with that group of people." Kelly raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" she asked, clearly not happy. I took a breath. I don't have anything in common with those guys, and I feel uncomfortable around their wives. Remember the last barbecue? Pam made it pretty clear that all I had to do was nod, and she would have tried to take me to her room. And then there's her husband, who just talks to you the whole time. I could see the anger in Kelly's eyes as she listened to me. "I don't like you calling our friends bad people, Jim," she said, stiffening up. "I really don't know what's wrong with you." She was now poking back at me. "Are you jealous of Chad?" "If you had taken Pam up on her invitation, you wouldn't feel so lonely," she continued. "I can't believe you didn't enjoy the attention." That made me feel cold inside for a moment. There's a big difference between harmless flirting and something more in your face. "Are you saying you're not worried that one of your best friends is flirting with me?" I asked. Kelly must have realized she had gone too far because she quickly changed her tone. "No, Jim, that's not what I meant. Pam is just a really friendly person. I'm sure she didn't mean anything by it." "Now hurry back. I know I'm a catch and no other woman could ever be as good as me. So get back here on time for once. Have I mentioned that being vain is a thing for women? It's like how guys have egos, but their vanity is fancier and takes more work to keep up." As a parting move, Kelly came close to me. "Play your cards right and you might have a nice evening," she said with a playful smile. She lightly brushed her finger on my cheek before turning and walking into the bedroom. I felt my heart race as I watched her lace underwear sway and then vanish from my view. I let out a sigh and grabbed my coat and briefcase as I left the house, trying to look calm as I pulled my keys from my pocket. That woman sure knows how to get to me. From the start of our marriage, Kelly chose to stay home and work with a charity instead of having a job. I didn't mind her choice, though it sometimes made her unaware of how hard it is to earn a living when I should have been feeling excited about the night ahead. Still, I couldn't shake a feeling that something bad was coming. I just couldn't figure out what it was. For the past couple of months, something felt off in our home. This party was at Caroline and Benjamin's house, and as we walked into the backyard, I saw a group of 4 couples all gathered in the gazebo. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, but they seemed to be acting secretive. I felt better seeing a few more couples and some singles around, so I wouldn't have to talk to what I thought of as the Kelly gang all night. So it didn't surprise me when Kelly led us right to the gazebo. When we got there, everyone greeted us. "Kelly, Jimmy!" "Great, they're already shortening my name." My first thought was frustration, and the night hadn't even really begun. Nothing bugs me more than when people mess with my name. I know what you're thinking, why am I so sensitive? But hear me out. Imagine you come to my place and I ask what you'd like to drink. If you say coffee, you expect to get coffee, right? Well, not this group. They would just bring you tea instead. If you like tea, that's fine, but if you're like me and can't stand it, you'd feel hurt. That's all I have to say about that. I'm glad you arrived at a good time. Carol made sure to remind me of that. I have been a bit late to some gatherings, especially those with Kelly's group. I felt my mood darken, but I tried to keep calm. Look at Carol, Ben, Pam, Chad, Liz, Norm, Sue, and Mel. They all look too comfortable together. It annoys me that they don't mind being called by short names. Their real names are Caroline and Benjamin, Pamela and Chadwick, Elizabeth and Norman, and Suzanne and Malcolm. I have to say I can let Chad slide. Who would want to call a kid Chadwick? Chad works just fine. But then there's Liz. She goes by so many names. It's like she has more nicknames than people have in Spain. Still, I can see why. She seems to have trouble thinking. Sometimes I wonder if she even understands what's going on around her. Yes, she isn't the brightest. You could call her anything and she'd just laugh. Pam got up to greet Kelly. "Wow, you look fantastic." Kelly smiled at the compliment. There are moments when I really wonder why I married Kelly. Sometimes she feels a bit clueless too. I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Norm moved away to let Kelly sit. "Don't mind James. He's just a bit stressed," Kelly said, waving me over. "Come on, there's still room. Beth and Sue won't mind." Sue made some space for me while Beth winked and joked, "I won't bite too hard." Then she laughed again. I couldn't believe she could think at all. Now, let me tell you about Kelly's friends. Carol gives off a vibe like a hawk watching for something to catch. She kind of reminds me of a vulture, always looking for the next opportunity. Then there's Beth, the silly one. Her husband Ben isn't any better. He has a saying, "Use it or lose it." It's not very deep, but it fits him, as he only seems to be about muscles. As for Pam and Chad, they seem to be a messy pair. I bet they were all over each other before they even left the changing room. They are truly a mismatched couple. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in a bad place someday. I guess my dislike is showing. But even if Beth is silly, she's not as bad as they are. She doesn't pretend to be clever. Her husband Norman thinks he's very smart, but I can see where he's not quite right. If you spent enough time with Beth, you'd probably see it too. Honestly, does anyone think he is smarter than me? My IQ is 10 points higher, and I don't think I'm a genius. I remember the silly test they all thought was a fun idea. I scored a 125, which is okay, but not genius level. Norman got upset when he didn't do as well. He thinks he should be the best. Anyway, that's his problem. Mel's wife, Sue, talks a lot, no kidding. If there were cameras for how much someone talks, she would get a ticket for speeding in a quiet area. Where I live, that means driving over 40 kilometers per hour. Got it? Good. I keep forgetting to buy a voice recorder. I'd like to listen to her speaking slowly later, just to see if there is any real sense in what she says. Honestly, it makes me tired just listening to her. Then we have Mel. Now let's be clear. I can be funny sometimes. Sometimes my jokes flop like they fell off a cliff. I do have my moments, though. I can be funny or serious depending on who I'm with and how much I've had to drink. I can even be romantic, especially if there are nice people around. But I do mess up sometimes. A lot of it depends on how much I drink. Take our last anniversary, for example. I actually remembered it for once. Can you believe that? Of course, Kelly might tell you something different. It was probably my fault for stopping by the pub on my way home with some flowers and chocolates. Wouldn't you feel good about remembering such a big day? It was our 5th anniversary. Okay, maybe I got a little distracted. These things happen. Luckily, I live not far from the pub. But that didn't help me at all. People say if you drink and drive, you're being foolish. I completely agree now because if I hadn't driven, I wouldn't have ended up sitting on those roses. I woke up the next morning with a rose stem stuck to me and a headache like a drum. But that's not the worst part. I stumbled out to the car and was relieved to find it still in the driveway. But the rest of the roses were lying on the ground next to the door. I have no idea where the chocolates went. Now I'm really in trouble. And not in the way I wanted. A bunch of long-stemmed flowers without the blooms on top and no chocolates just doesn't look as nice, does it? The last thing I remember is my friends giving me a friendly pat on the back, wishing me a great day. I'm glad I remembered it that day and not a week later when I'd be confused about why I was in trouble. But here I am, still in trouble, right? Isn't it the thought that matters? Well, not to Kelly. She didn't want to see it that way. It feels like I can never win. Now don't think I'm a heavy drinker. I only get drunk once or twice a year. Usually I just have 1 or 2 light beers. The trouble is with my timing. I can be serious and smart, but that's best when I'm completely sober. I can change my mood to fit the situation. But I'm not just going to flip like a light switch. It's frustrating how Norm changes his mind more than anyone I know. On the other hand, Mel is very different. He just goes along with the crowd. He's like a chameleon. No matter who he's with, he changes to fit in. Sometimes he blends in so much that it gets annoying. If his friends are mean, he can be mean too. But if they're nice, he can switch to nice so fast that you might get whiplash just watching him. So now you understand why I don't want to be around them. But back to my story. I was about to walk into a tricky situation. I raised my hand. I thought I'd grab some drinks first. Chad raised his beer can and asked for another drink too. Jimmy, my old friend, had a funny tone in his voice which made me feel uneasy. I thought he was just trying to tease me, so I ignored him and asked the others. "Does anyone else need a drink?" I repeated to myself, "Just 5 minutes," as I walked over to the bar. That's all it took, and I was ready to strangle everyone when I returned with the drinks. When I got back, I caught a glimpse of Liz and Sue. They were giggling like schoolgirls and patting the seat next to them, clearly inviting me to sit down. I should mention that these women are actually in their late 20s to early 30s. Can you see why I want them to stop giggling? I set the drinks on the table next to them and said, "I just saw Franklin over there. I think I'll go see how he's doing." Franklin is a good guy, a real lifesaver. He patrols the beach, always helping people who need it. He should have returned to the water by now without giving anyone a chance to complain. I turned around, but not before I noticed Kelly's frustrated expression. "I'm here, my friend. You've led the horse to water, but don't think I will drink with your group." I smiled to myself. I enjoy winning. Hey, don't judge me. You would feel the same if you saw my record. I spent most of the evening keeping my distance from Kelly's friends, while still watching her closely. Kelly was always in my sight. If more than 5 or 10 minutes passed, I started to notice when she disappeared, which annoyed me. After chatting quietly with the other guests, Carolyn found me by the makeshift bar. "There you are, stranger." I turned to see Carolyn pouring herself more white wine. "Hi, Carol. The party looks like it's going well." I needed to say something, and that was the safest comment I could think of quickly. I felt a bit upset, but I hid it. I noticed as Carolyn turned and looked around, giving me a clear view of her outfit. "Yes, I think everyone is having a good time. How about you, Jim? Are you enjoying yourself?" Carolyn looked me right in the eye. "Is something wrong, Jimmy? You seem a bit off today." Did I mention how they keep messing with my name? I'm sure I have. I know I've told them many times. None of them seem to care about what I think. I just have to accept that they won't change. I'm repeating myself, aren't I? Sorry, Kelly, I guess I have that habit since I get distracted a lot too. Enough about that. I sighed softly and joked. "No, not really, Carol. Why do you ask?" I realized too late that my question asked for a reply I really didn't want to hear. Carolyn bit her lip for a moment. "Oh, it's nothing much. Ebby thought she might have said or done something to hurt your feelings when you first got here. She didn't mean anything by her comment." Wow, that's something new. If Beth has a new identity, I wonder if the tax people know they're dealing with someone who has more than one name. Come to think of it, does Norm spend every night with a different woman? Maybe he's not as clueless as I thought, but really it must be exhausting trying to manage that many relationships with only a few brain cells to share. I looked at Carolyn's face to see if it gave away any feelings. It didn't show worry or concern, but more like she was unsure. It's tough to read people who always seem hungry for attention. "No, Carol, I'm okay. Beth can stop worrying. Her words didn't bother me at all. I just feel a bit uneasy in close spots. Franklin wants to take Kelly and me water skiing when his boat is ready. I just wanted to check if he had fixed the motor." Carol's mood got a lot better. Oh no. When will I learn to not speak so much? "Oh, I have to show you something," she said. I sighed quietly as Carol took my hand and almost pulled me into the house. Last summer, Benny and I went skiing with Frank and Ivy. I have pictures of us in the boat. Do you want to see? She asked. I groaned inside. Great thought, James. You just made yourself look silly, but I said okay. Sure, I'd love to see the boat. As Carol opened the photo book, she moved closer to me, bumping her shoulder against my arm as she looked at the pages. I tried to stay a little farther away without it looking obvious, but I didn't do a great job. I kept glancing out the sliding door to see if Kelly would notice me. She and the others were chatting happily, not looking our way. Sometimes Carol would lift her hand and play with her shirt, pulling my gaze towards her. Okay, so she's pretty attractive. So what? Carol talked a lot about Ivy and her swimsuits, or lack of them, and about the boat as well. See, Jimmy? We had a great time that weekend skiing and relaxing in the sun. Maybe we can do it together when Frank gets the boat ready. That's when I decided to pull back. Carol had her back to the door as she set the photo book down on the table, opening her shirt just a bit more and showing me more than I was comfortable with. Wow, she wasn't wearing a bra, and here I was getting a very close view. I know I've told Kelly a few times to dress more modestly in public. She usually responds with, "Oh, I didn't know." Yeah, right. I could tell if I was wearing shorts. She would notice if I was showing too much and would ask, "See anything else you like, Jimmy?" She teased. What do you think I was thinking, guys? Wrong again. Suddenly I felt like a snack. Note to self, apologize to every woman I ever looked at like that. While it might be fun if you're interested, it can be really scary if you don't want to go there. I caught myself staring at Carol's shirt, and even though she looked great, I felt sweat on my forehead. I stole another look outside. Kelly and the others still didn't see us. Dang it, there never seems to be a police officer around when you need one. But if a woman does something slightly wrong, suddenly they are right behind you, ready to jump in. I had a strong feeling that something was off, like they were waiting for me to react. I had to admit that Carol was good at getting attention. Nothing too obvious, just small movements of her hands that caught my eye. Her perfume was familiar, the same one Kelly often wears, the one that drives me crazy. That perfume felt intentional, and I couldn't help but think she borrowed it from Kelly on purpose. If it wasn't for her last comment, I might have brushed it off. I could have kept enjoying the party, but that remark crossed a line. "Do you do this with all your guests, Caroline?" I asked. Carol looked a bit shocked and quickly dropped her hand. She clearly wasn't expecting this reaction. My voice was firm, not questioning, and it made her nervously play with the sash around her waist. "What does that mean?" I finally said, feeling frustrated. "Stop acting innocent, Caroline. You're not Elizabeth." Every time Kelly and I come to one of these gatherings, I always end up dodging advances from one of you women. First Pam, then Sue and Liz, and now you. You all seem to think I'm the kind of husband who would cheat on his wife. Well, let me make it clear, Caroline. I am not going to disrespect my marriage. Carol looked smaller as I spoke. I will not cheat on my wife with anyone, including you and your friends. I don't care how you all act with each other. If you really loved your husbands, you wouldn't be trying to get me involved with you. What you just did was completely out of line. My face showed how disgusted I felt, and I walked to the sliding door and called out to my wife, Kelly. "We're leaving now." Kelly turned around from chatting with Chad and Ben. "What, are you serious? What's wrong? It's still early and we don't have to go yet." Carol quickly left the room, and as she got near Kelly, she just shrugged. I could see Kelly asking her what happened, but all Carol did was shake her head and keep walking. Kelly walked into the living room, looking at me with questions in her eyes. "We're leaving, and I don't want to hear any complaints from you about it," I said firmly. Kelly glanced back out the door and then turned to me again, looking concerned. "What's gotten into you, James? What did you say to her?" Carol looked like she might cry, but I didn't believe it. I've had enough of these fake friends. You can tell your group of friends to stay away from me. Now let's go. They make me sick. Kelly took a breath and fired back. "James Barrymore, you need to apologize. They are good people and my friends. If you upset Carol, then you should go back and say you're sorry." I looked at her like, who does she think she is? I sneered a bit. Friends don't flirt with each other's husbands. Good people don't act like your so-called friends do. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. If you're not in the car by then, you can walk home by yourself. It's not that far, just about a mile. But with the high heels she has on, it might feel like 10 times that. Her feet hurt too much to even think about taking them off. Kelly had never seen me this angry. Don't get me wrong, I can get much angrier than this. But she didn't know that and tried to calm me down. Please, James, there must be a mistake. We can fix this. I just glared at her as I walked out the front door. James, wait! I need my purse and shawl. Don't go anywhere. Kelly must have gone out back to her friends again. What happened to having a nice, quiet evening? I sat in the car and checked my watch. 2 minutes, 27 seconds, and counting. The mood in the car was so tense it felt like ice could form on the rearview mirror. We didn't say a word. I was fuming, and Kelly was staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. As soon as we got home, Kelly exploded. Damn you, James! You embarrassed me tonight! I don't get what all the fuss is about. I was on my way to the bedroom when I stopped halfway up the stairs. Just so you know, my dear wife, I take cheating very seriously. I value my promises in marriage. Carol and her friends are trying hard to get me to forget those promises. I was getting really upset and threw my hands up in frustration. I give up. I'm going to bed before I say something I'll regret. Are you coming? Shut up. I know what you're thinking, she fired back. You think everything is going to be okay. It's a guy thing, right? Just because the party went bad doesn't mean the night has to be bad, too. But Kelly was in a bad mood now, and she seemed very upset. If you go to bed like that, you can forget about any chances for tonight. You need to behave better first, Jimmy boy. Okay, maybe I was being a bit too hopeful. Have you ever seen a dog chasing after a female dog? He keeps trying even when she keeps pushing him away until she's ready. It's ridiculous, and I would feel the same if I weren't so mad at Kelly's friends for ruining my night. It must be something about women. Who in their right mind gives all the charm to one person but ignores another? It seems like poor planning, if you ask me. What is it with women and not getting it? The saying is true. The one you miss out on is the one you'll never have. It's a simple truth. Just think about it for a moment. Maybe I should tell you a bit about my dear wife. I met Kelly about 7 years ago at a race. After dating for a year, we got married, much to the worry of our parents. Both our families had their issues. There were a couple of divorces on both sides. My dad's first wife cheated on him with their neighbor. She got a good lawyer, and he ended up losing a lot. Kelly's mom, Marcy, had 2 husbands. But unlike my dad's ex, she didn't cheat. She was the one who got left behind. The first husband drank and gambled all their money away before disappearing. Marcy had to work 3 jobs to pay off the debts he left. The second husband, who was the father of her son, ran off with his secretary, draining the bank account and never helping with child support. He was one of those deadbeat dads. Kelly's stepdad, Conroy, is husband number 3. Talk about asking for trouble. It's like that old saying about a dog that keeps getting kicked. So you see, they didn't have much faith in love. You'd think that would stop them from trying again. But they did have a safety plan, a prenuptial agreement. This way, if things didn't work out, both sides would be safe. We didn't want to think about that. We were in love and everything seemed great until Kelly met up with her old friends. And I do mean old friends. These women went to school with her. That put me on the outside from the beginning, didn't it? I went to school in Western Australia. I remember a fight with Noah who thought everything was better in Texas than in Queensland. What a fool. I asked him if Texas had coal trains 2 miles long, just like I saw in Port Augusta, South Australia. In Queensland, I've seen trains with 2 engines in front and more in the middle, all spread out. I told him that England could fit into Queensland 12 times, and that Queensland is just the 2nd biggest state in Australia. It makes Texas look small, like a backyard. I won't even start on the argument we had about roads in Germany versus Australia. They want to build 40 lanes coming out of Bonn in both directions. If Texas is like a big backyard, then Germany is like a small garden in the back corner full of ants. It's annoying. Now, before you get upset, I'm not saying Texans can't be proud of their state. They have a lot to be proud of. For example, Texas produces more oil than all the oil fields in Australia put together. I just wish the guy would get his facts straight. Okay, maybe there's not much you can do with 70% of land on the Nullarbor Plain. Even a dingo has to pack food just to go out. But that's not the main point. Western Australia has amazing views, great crayfish fishing, and mountains full of iron ore. And let's not forget Bondi, that's Alan Bond. Still lost? Look up America's Cup 83. You'll understand. Just don't bring up his business practices and you'll be fine. Kelly had to step in after that comment about Texas. I have to admit that I had been drinking a lot, and my patience was running thin. Another silly comment from him, and he might have found himself in trouble. Oh, sorry, I got off track. He drives me crazy with his non-stop bragging. When it comes to tourists, he couldn't care less. Ask him anything about Australia, and all he talks about is what his house looks like. He wouldn't even know if his shoes were on the wrong feet unless they had L and R written on them. Where was I? Right, Kelly. She and I were having a good time until those guys showed up. Since then, things have changed. Kelly can get grumpy when she doesn't get her way. I know all too well how sharp her words can be, but that's not her biggest tool. If her sharp words are like a knife that cuts deep, then her charm is like a powerful bomb, and she knows how to use it very well. So what happened next won't shock you. I heard her say something about getting lucky, which makes me wonder, why does a wife always make you feel like you owe her something? And why should I be the one needing to feel lucky? Forget that. I can feel lucky if I buy her a pearl necklace or a new dress. But has she ever bought me a toolbox or a fishing rod just because? Not a chance. My dad tells me all the time that the only difference between wives and other women is that with a woman, you know what you're paying for up front. If she doesn't give you what you want, you can just find someone else. But once you're married, it's a whole different story. You're stuck. Or not, depending on the situation. Man, does my dad love to talk about wives when he gets started. He says that not only are you paying for it without getting what you want, but you're also paying for the woman to be with someone else after she takes half your things. You should see Marcy and Dad argue. It's intense. We have to keep them apart to keep the peace in the family. I almost fell over when I asked my dad, "Then why did you get married?" I got out of there quickly. He didn't seem to have a good answer for that. Oops, I did it again. Sorry. Back to my story. Wow, I got off track. Oh, right, luck. Ha! Never showed that I had learned from tough times. I knew once Kelly got upset, it usually took days before she calmed down enough to talk like a normal person. I'm tired. Kelly, if you want to go to bed, I'm not stopping you. But if you think I'm going to sleep on the couch just because you're in a bad mood, you're wrong. With that, I trudged up the stairs. Kelly was way past annoyed and was getting really angry. I know I messed up, and I take the blame for what I said, but sometimes you just have to let it go. I saw Kelly hesitate for a moment, which gave me a little bit of hope that I could maybe not lose this argument. What? I'm not crazy, just realistic. There's no real win here. Remember, we're talking about a woman. I have no plans to sleep in the same room with someone who acts like a know-it-all. With that, she rushed up the stairs and into our room. Wow, she can really move when she wants to. She grabbed her nightgown and marched to the spare bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I was a bit surprised because I thought she would slam our door in my face. See what I mean? I win the argument but lose the chance to have a good night. I'd call that a tie. Don't think that if you give in during a fight, you'll get to enjoy the night afterward. It doesn't work like that. I learned that early in my marriage when I backed down, and all it did was make her feel like she won, while I got frustrated because I knew the real reason she felt that way. I lost both ways. It's like losing or losing for me. It's all over but the shouting, so no, I don't back down anymore. The best you can hope for is a tie. As far as I'm concerned, that whole situation is done. I know about being hopeful. Remember the dog? Yeah, well, it's in us men. It's like how women are with credit cards and shopping. If men weren't hopeful, the whole world would come to a stop. The weather around the house stayed cool for a few days, but Kelly had something to say, and she brought it up on Saturday morning during breakfast. James, we need to talk, sweetie. This is silly. We keep avoiding each other. I don't have a problem, Kelly. It's you and your friends who do. They just won't stop. You keep trying to make them back off, but it doesn't work. The cold mood between us is going to last a long time if this keeps up. Kelly looked upset. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Our friends like you. They just want to know you better, that's all. It's like your name. Why is it so important for everyone to call you James instead of Jim or Jimmy? You shorten their names. Why can't you shorten yours? Like me? You're kidding. Listen, Kelly, I like my name the way my parents gave it to me. If they wanted me to be called Jim or Jimmy, that's what they would have named me. But they named me James. I don't know why, but that's what it is, and I don't want to change it. I only shorten their names because they like it. I'm trying to make them comfortable, but they don't return the favor for me. Remember, I've already lost one friend, and I don't want to lose more. I was getting really frustrated now. And that's not all. You weren't there when Caroline almost threw herself at me. I could see Kelly trying to hold back a laugh, and it made me even angrier. You are overreacting. How about I talk to them and try to find a middle ground? I finished my coffee and stood up to go work in the yard. I don't care what you say to them, as long as I don't have to change my values or our marriage. And make sure their husbands know I won't be okay with them trying anything with you either. Say what you want, but just get them to back off. I turned and went out the back door. I could see Kelly was mad. She looked like she wanted to scream. Instead, she left the house and went next door to Pam's place. Oh, I didn't tell you. Pam and her partner live next door. They are so loud. You would think they lived in the next state, and I'm really not jealous. The next morning, I left for work early to avoid another talk with Kelly. I needed some time to think, and I find it easier to do that at work where there aren't many distractions. After a long day of getting nothing done, both in my thoughts and at work, I came home. That afternoon, what I saw didn't make me feel any better. 3 cars blocked the garage door, and from their looks, I had no doubt that Kelly was hosting her group of chatty friends. I opened the door to hear a loud group of voices. Kelly turned to greet me as I walked in. Hey, that rhymes! I'm a poet and didn't know it. Sorry, I'll be quiet now. Hi, sweetie, you look tired. Come over here and sit down. We'll get you a drink so you can relax, she said. I rolled my eyes at the thought. I waved my hand. I won't interrupt your girl talk, I'll just get a beer. I grabbed some cheese and crackers to snack on until dinner. I dropped my briefcase, loosened my tie, and walked into the kitchen, trying not to pay attention to the looks the women were giving each other. After I got something to eat and drink, I stepped out onto the patio to enjoy some peace, but it wasn't long before everyone followed me outside, with Kelly standing the closest. I sighed inside and waited for the chatter to start again. Honey, can we talk for a minute? I didn't like when she said that. The words little and talk shouldn't go together, especially from her. I sighed again. This was the last thing I wanted. But to keep the peace, I said, okay, I'm really tired, Kelly, and I just want to relax for a few minutes. If it won't take long, go ahead. I looked Kelly straight in the eye, but she seemed unsure of how to start until Pamela jumped in. James, nice catch there, Pam said, sounding a bit doubtful. The reason we're all here is that we owe you an apology. It seems that we, well, all of us girls, made you feel uncomfortable, and that was not our intention. Pam paused, I guess to see how I would react, and when I didn't show any concern, she kept talking. But seriously, I'm always worried when Caroline is around. It's like pouring acid on metal, I thought. You always get a reaction, which isn't good, but if you pour it on glass and it reacts, now that's a real problem. My face didn't show it, but inside I was a bit bored. Anyway, Pam continued. Kelly is upset that you two are having a fight, and it seems it's because of something we did that you thought was wrong. We just want to say we're sorry for any misunderstanding. I nodded but didn't say anything, and then Kelly took over. I think some of this might be my fault, sweetheart. You see, when we girls get together, we talk a lot. I guess it's not much different from when you guys hang out and talk about us. I might have let slip how good you are at, well, you know. The girls got curious after that. At first, I was confused. No one was saying what they really meant, but that's how women are sometimes. I raised my hand to stop Kelly. Wait a second, Kelly. Are you saying you've been sharing our private talks with your friends? Are you really bragging about what we do? I could feel my face getting hotter. Kelly must have seen it too. It's not what you think, she said. I thought I could help you have your dream. You know, the one about a threesome? You said it was your favorite. I thought we could try it. She trailed off, probably regretting starting this chat. A heavy feeling grew in my stomach and I was really upset. You can't be serious, Kelly. I don't like sharing my personal feelings with everyone. The guys and I might talk about women, but I don't share what we do together. How would you feel if I told all my friends at the bar about our private moments? Not that it's going to happen now. What did she expect? My hopes had been crushed all week. That made them all go silent. They stared at me with big eyes. I usually said I didn't want that to happen anyway. So this is why these women had been bothering me. I was so angry that I swiped my nearly empty beer bottle across the table. Don't judge me for that. I know it's not something I should do. To my surprise, the bottle hit the deck but didn't spill a single drop. I couldn't help but think I'd tell the guys at the bar about this later. I would have liked it if I wasn't so mad at Kelly. Instead of gossiping with these neighbor women, why don't you do what a good wife should do? You should be getting our dinner on the table. The women took a couple of steps back and looked scared. I'll be done in an hour after I finish cleaning up. If you do that, I'll be very happy at home, not just in the bedroom. I got up from my chair and walked into the house. I was really, really angry. Furious was a better way to say it. Now she knew how mad I could get. As I walked past the back door, I could hear Kelly crying. I was pacing back and forth, more upset than ever. This situation was not going well. Did anyone have any other bright ideas? Then I heard her sobbing hard. I felt confused again. Sometimes I just don't understand women. It seemed like they enjoyed making us feel uneasy. What didn't make sense was that at first I was upset because I missed a romantic night. I didn't get lucky. Call it whatever you want. And she got mad because I woke up and talked to her friends instead. Now I was angry and she was crying. Forget Tiff. I knew I had enough. I went upstairs and took a shower. I thought maybe things would seem clearer after I calmed down, but that didn't happen. Just wishful thinking. I could hear Kelly banging pots in the kitchen. I guess she was trying to deal with her feelings when I went back down. I stepped into a minefield. Why are you so mad now, Kelly? I haven't done anything wrong. Then she confused me again by actually telling me what was bothering her. If I could only understand her feelings and figure out how to put it into words, I would be rich. Sorry for those who don't get it. We're talking money here. Kelly stopped what she was doing and turned to me because she thought I was trying to be loving. But all I got back was her anger. What was that with the bottle? How could you say those things in front of them? I don't understand you anymore, James. This was supposed to be a dream come true for you, and all I'm getting is trouble. Her words hit me hard. Kelly hardly ever swears, so I knew she was really mad. She wiped her tears away. All my friends are probably laughing at me, thinking I have a husband who doesn't care about women. I'm proud of you, James, and I just told my friends that. But they made it a game to see how good you really are. What does it matter? It was all just playful flirting. I wasn't jealous at all. In fact, it made me feel good to know I had a husband that women admire and who loves me back. I watched as Kelly folded her arms and stared at the floor. Being married to someone like her taught me to think before I speak. Not that I always did that. I went to the kitchen and started making coffee so I could think. I'm sorry I overreacted, sweetheart, but it really bothered me. It truly did. I don't believe anyone else needs to know about our life, whether it's at home or in private. I told you it was just a daydream, and I didn't want to do anything about it. Kelly looked at me, hurt and confused. That still doesn't explain why you don't want to make it real. I think it's exciting. Ever since you mentioned it, I can't stop thinking about it. Please tell me why you don't want to try. I sat down at the kitchen table, thinking about why I was hesitant to share my feelings with Kelly. It didn't feel right to me. Okay, Kelly, let's forget about the prenuptial part for now. You remember how our parents made us sign that? Besides that, do you know what really annoys me? It's my biggest pet peeve. Kelly wiped a tear away and paused to think. Is it people shortening your name? I joked softly. Bloody women? She asked. Yes, sweetie, but besides that? Kelly shook her head. I have no clue. Hypocrisy, I can't stand it. If I let myself get into this fantasy, I would be a big hypocrite. And just so you know, I actually agree with our prenuptial. Kelly just stared, trying to figure out what to say next. You think I'm boring, but you're wrong. I have normal dreams and feelings just like any other guy. I've had some fun before when I was single, but now that I'm married, I need to leave all that behind. Playing around isn't good for a marriage, especially not for ours. I looked down at the table and traced the pattern on the tablecloth. I love you, Kelly, and I don't want to make you sad. These past months, especially the last few weeks, have been really stressful for me because of this misunderstanding. If I did this, I wouldn't have the right to complain if you wanted to be with another man. I wouldn't be able to handle that, sweetheart. It would crush me. So I'm putting my daydreams away for the sake of our marriage. I do this for you, Kelly. Can you see why I'm against these games you women play? Kelly suddenly looked sick and angry. Did I mention women are great at multitasking? I could write a whole paper on how men and women focus on different things, so if you're really curious, just email me and I'll reply. Okay. She took a few deep breaths, trying to calm down. I could feel Kelly getting ready to argue. So what you're saying is that what's good for the man isn't good for the woman. That's not what I mean, Kelly, and you know it. I think some fantasies should stay just that, fantasies. Kelly's expression hardened, and I could see her anger rising. The tension was rising under the surface. You talk about hating dishonesty, but then you act that way in your next breath. Make up your mind, Jim. Which is it? You can dream about things, but you're saying I can't. I lowered my head. I had been here before. When Kelly gets into a mood, she refuses to hear what I'm saying. She only focuses on what she thinks is being said. You're not listening, dear. I never said you can't dream. What I mean is that some dreams are better left alone. Just like mine about a relationship with another woman. It wouldn't be fair to you because I couldn't let you do the same. Kelly crossed her arms. Don't you think that's a bit selfish? I looked up at my angry wife and wondered why she was pushing this so hard. To her, I said, yes, Kelly, it is very selfish and unfair. This is the key difference. If I went through with it, but I haven't and I never will. So, no, I don't think I'm selfish or unfair. Let me ask you something. Since we're talking about this, why do you care so much about this small issue? I saw Kelly turn pale at my question. What do you mean by that? My anger started to rise again. Red flags were popping up everywhere, and I didn't like where this was going. It means, dear wife, I'm a chemical engineer, and I know how reactions work. A little flirting here and there can lead to much bigger problems. Then someone gets hurt, and before you know it, your marriage can break apart. Want to give me a fantasy I can actually enjoy? How about you waiting at the door with just your heels and a drink when I come home from work? I think you want more than just to make my dream come true. Kelly's face turned from pale to angry red in an instant. It looked like she was about to explode, and I almost thought she had talked to those so-called friends of hers. Kelly must have reached a turning point. Her face tightened. Okay, James, I admit I had something else in mind. You're right. I stupidly thought that if it was okay for you to have your wish, maybe I could have mine too someday. I have dreams too, you know, but now it seems you're not as willing to share as I am. Selfishness is the real point. You make your own dinner, Kelly yelled. She threw a pot into the sink, turned, and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Did she even hear anything I just said? I just shook my head in disbelief. I walked into the living room and grabbed my coat. I decided I'd enjoy a meal more if I didn't have to listen to Kelly throwing things around in our bedroom. I really dislike arguing, especially with a woman. For them, an argument is a talk that goes on until they feel you understand that they are right. I knew she wanted to do something special, but if that was her goal, she could forget it. By the time I got home, Kelly was a bit calmer, but not much when it came to where I sleep. If you want some quiet, you need to be careful. So I decided to sleep in the guest room that night. I was still upset about our earlier talk. Forget that doctor. The night turned out like the last few weeks, with little sleep and a heavy feeling in my house. I woke up early again. I hate mornings to begin with. Getting up early really tires me out, but after a quick cup of coffee, I headed to work. I needed something to distract me from my problems, and work usually helped with that. But today, I couldn't get into it. Honestly, I hadn't been much help to anyone for the last week or two. Mr. Stanton would like to see you in his office, Annette said over the intercom. I dragged myself out of my chair. What now? I thought to myself. Leonard Stanton owns Stanton Chemicals and is a good friend, but I wasn't in the mood to deal with him this morning. I'm a chemical engineer. I know what you're thinking. I'm not a chemist. We both work with chemistry, but in different ways. They give out medicine to people who can't sleep. I work in factories, mixing things and making new materials for glues and other stuff. It annoys me when Kelly tells her friends at parties that I'm a chemist. For hours, I have to deal with people asking me how to fix their foot problems, or what to give their kids if they have a stomach issue. How am I supposed to know? I can think of a way to dissolve your foot or maybe glue your kid's bottom shut. But if that's not what you need, go see a real chemist. You might wonder how I got into chemistry. It all started when my dad got me a junior chemistry set for my 9th birthday. I ended up blowing up his tools twice and almost burned down the garage once. He was not happy with me. But how was I supposed to know that mixing glycerin with potassium permanganate would cause a big reaction? What's that, you ask? Yeah, I was just as shocked back then. The stuff catches fire. Then you're in huge trouble with your dad. The ignition started on a plastic table, and burning plastic dripped into a pan of old engine oil. I realized I was in big trouble. That wasn't even my worst mistake. Where was I going with this? Oh yes, I was called into the boss's office. And no, I haven't blown up any labs yet. Go right in, Mr. Barrymore. He's expecting you. I tried to smile, but it didn't feel real. Thanks, Tracy. Leonard watched me as I walked into his office. Don't just stand there messing up my office, James. Sit down and tell me who took your lollipop. Leonard and I had been friends for over 10 years. He had taken me into the business when I just finished university. Why do you think I'm upset, Leonard? I asked. He laughed. You forgot to make your joke about little people for the day. Leonard looked a bit like Danny DeVito, with a goatee and a bit more hair. I had often joked that if he ever needed money, he could be a body double. He just teased me back, saying I was jealous because he had a reason to look at women. Also, James, everyone here is giving you space. What's wrong? You've been acting strange for a few days. He pointed out that removing those biohazard stickers was a hassle. Someone is angry with you. I think a monkey stuck one on your lab door before you got here this morning. That's how bad it was. I didn't even see any marks on my door. Leonard and I usually joked around. He knew not to play with my name, and I stayed away from talking about my 2 ex-wives. It's not about that. I'm just having a little trouble with Kelly lately. Nothing serious, just something feels off. I'll fix it. But really, I wanted to avoid saying too much. You know what? You're the only thing between me and losing everything. You own most of my company. If you go down, I go down too. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I want to see you happy because it helps me too. So, what's going on with these women? Leonard asked. When he brought me into the company, I had asked for stock options instead of raises to keep control of my inventions. He agreed because he was just getting started and wanted to save money. He didn't think 2 ex-wives would take half of everything he had. Now he saw it as a good deal since I became a major stockholder. When his first wife took half of everything, I ended up with about the same amount as him and his ex. When his second wife also left with half, I found myself with a deciding vote alongside Leonard's stock. Together, we could stop any plans those 2 women tried to make about Leonard's business. I shared all my concerns and everything that had happened recently. I never understood why he got involved with either of his wives. From the beginning, with each of them, I noticed that strange sparkle in their eyes when they looked at him. Leonard listened closely. I hadn't spoken about this with him before, and he seemed a bit sorry, unsure about discussing his past marriages. I thought, well, it's tough to know the real person behind the outside. Leonard chuckled, then became serious. So, do you think she's being unfaithful? That's the issue, Leonard. I'm not sure. I can't point to anything specific. There's no clear proof. No photos, no confessions, not even witnesses. She doesn't stay out late. I don't know what she does during the day, but every time I call the house phone, she answers. But that doesn't really mean anything. It's just a feeling I have. And now, this silly fight we're having only adds to my worries. It's honestly scaring me. If I knew for sure I could do something, instead I have a bunch of doubts and questions with no answers. Why not hire someone to check things out, even her friends? I can recommend a few good private detectives who won't charge too much. I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but from my own hard lessons, it's better to face these things sooner rather than later. I felt a rush of confusion. I wondered if Leonard had spoken to my father about all of this. That was just another mess to deal with. Look, I was only 10 back then, okay? I frowned at Leonard, feeling sad. He was saying what I had been thinking. In a marriage, those kinds of thoughts can really harm things. Don't you think that's a bit extreme right now? Leonard looked at a small clear box on his table that held 2 wedding rings set in resin. I understand why you hesitate, James. You love her and don't want to judge her wrongly. But at its worst, that's just denial, my friend. Call it whatever you want. It still feels the same. Okay, I admit I might not be the best person to talk about this, but you need to take action and fast before it's too late. Why not try something shocking? And that's what I did. I put the folder down on the table in front of Kelly. Open the folder and see what's inside. We'll talk when I'm done with my shower. I wear the pants in my family. I always have. I was in the middle of my shower when I heard Kelly shout, "Jim, what are you doing?" I replied, "We'll talk when I'm done washing." But she yelled back, "No, Jim, get out here right now and tell me what's wrong with you." She was upset. Then she told me which pants weren't okay to wear. I rolled my eyes. Every husband has heard that before. "You're not wearing that, are you?" It's not really a question, is it? It's more of a rule. It says, "I'm in charge. You better listen to me." Now, if you're a regular guy who doesn't pay attention, the answer is right there. I had the pants on, but I knew that was a bad idea. I wasn't talking to another guy. I was looking at the possibility of a lonely night ahead. If I walked out the door with those pants, I was asking for trouble. I had learned not to start a fight in my marriage, but this was one time I had to make an exception. I don't like taking big risks. That's just foolish. I mean, putting in a little money for a big reward seems better, but the most important thing is to keep my wife happy. So, a tip for you, change the pants and hope she's in a good mood. Later that night, if I play my cards right, I might get a different response from her. But it all depends on why she got upset about the pants in the first place. If it's serious, I could end up losing out completely. But honestly, I wasn't losing much, just a comfy pair of pants. That's not why I sighed and turned off the water. Why did I give in? My uncle always watches football and tries to teach me some of the rules. According to him, what I did was step back, look for my options, and go for a big play. So if you know football, you get what I mean. I realize now why I get distracted. I'm trying to share my thoughts about marriage and life, especially with a woman. So sit back and listen up. It might help you in your own relationship. Now, back to the argument. I grabbed my towel. You've read the paperwork. It says what it means on page 1, prenuptial agreement. We signed it before we got married. But I added a little note. This was me trying to find a way out. I read the agreement and I know we don't need to change it. She's still angry. What we need is for you to apologize to me right now. Yelling and swearing won't fix anything. I responded, Kelly, why don't you go downstairs, open a bottle of wine, and we can sit down and talk this over like adults. Just give me a moment to finish getting dressed. I can stay calm when I need to, on the outside. But inside, I felt like I wanted to break something. My team's quarterback was hopping nervously, waiting for the wide receiver to run to the right spot. Kelly got mad and left the bedroom. "Open your own damn bottle of wine," she yelled. "I'm too angry to talk to you now. I'm going out to cool off, so don't wait up." I messed up my throw, and it didn't go far enough. I walked out and flopped onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, just like my quarterback was doing now. I had to get my own dinner. I had to get my own wine, too. I don't even like wine. I prefer beer. I was trying to be nice, but where did that get me? I thought maybe I should just get my own life, I shouted out from the bedroom. I hope she didn't hear that. My wide receiver missed the ball. Game over. And no fun tonight. I really dislike football. I'd rather play rugby any day. Kelly came home around 10, I think. I heard a loud crash downstairs, like she was bumping into everything before she finally dropped onto the bed. She didn't even take off her clothes. There was no talking or goodnight kiss, not even a mumble. She smelled like rum. She turned her back to me and went to sleep. More like passed out. She didn't move at all night. I know I hardly slept at all. When morning came, I was in the kitchen pouring my first cup of coffee, feeling terrible, when Kelly stumbled in. "Oh God, I'm dying," she said. I nearly laughed at that. Tired didn't seem so bad this morning. I said, "Morning, Kelly. You look awful, like a cat dragged you in." I knew she wouldn't fight today, so I felt safe asking, "Can we talk about the agreement this afternoon?" I knew it was a bit pushy, but like that song from Bob Hudson says, don't let a chance go, especially when it's handed to you. It was clear Kelly had a bad headache from last night's drinks. She only moaned, "I can't talk about it now," with her arms folded on the table. Her hair, usually so neat, looked like a mess today. I felt bad for her, but part of me wanted to cheer and say yes. Instead, I kept my cool and went off to work, glad the tables weren't turned this time. So far, everything was going as Leonard and I thought it would. Leonard had told me that Kelly would be upset at first, but if she truly loved me and had nothing to hide, she would eventually agree to sign the new deal. I still felt bad about all this, but I admitted to myself that love alone is not enough to hold a marriage together. There could be other problems that might ruin things when we're feeling weak. I know I sound cynical, but think about it. If Kelly refuses to sign, it would mean she's been unfaithful, and I didn't want to stop that from happening. I cared for Kelly a lot, but if that was true, I might need to look into having her followed. As I drove home, I felt a heavy weight in my chest, knowing I had to face my wife. I half expected to see a lot of cars parked in the driveway, but was relieved that it wasn't too crowded. When the garage door opened, I was even more surprised to see Kelly's car still inside. Walking in, I spotted Kelly right away. She wasn't next door. She was in the living room with 2 glasses of wine and the agreement on the coffee table. I took a deep breath and thought, this is it. Don't back out now. This is a long shot. Kelly let me settle in, putting away my briefcase and taking off my tie. I felt we might need a drink before starting this talk. She pointed to the papers on the table. You might be right, I replied, but I want to say from the start that I'm not happy about needing to do this. I continued. I hope after you hear my reasons, you'll see it won't hurt our marriage. Kelly took a sip of her wine and frowned. I don't know how you can say that, James. It sounds like you don't trust me anymore. I picked up my wine, even though I didn't like it, and took a gulp. I sat down on the couch next to her. I started to wonder if Kelly was softening a bit, and if the wine was her way of showing she didn't like what was happening. No, sweetheart, that's not what I mean at all, I said. Deep down, I knew I was only half truthful. I trusted Kelly, but I wasn't sure how much. That angered me. I never thought I would be in this situation. Yes, I had worries about us, and I wanted to fix things. This was just a way to remove any doubt. I took Kelly's hand and held it. I need to apologize, and I hope you'll let me finish before you say anything. Kelly nodded, but I could sense doubt in her mind. I could almost hear her thinking, I just want to hear apologies, James. Her face said everything, but she was keeping quiet. I carried on talking. I think everything changed because I foolishly shared my fantasy with you. I feel like that has made you nervous and uncomfortable in our relationship. I'm really sorry about that, and I hope you can forgive me. I took a big sip of the wine and it tasted awful. I must have shown my dislike because Kelly had that cheeky look on her face. I think when I talked about wanting a threesome, you thought you might lose me, but that's so far from the truth, my dear. I understand what you might be feeling. If I let you do this for me, you may think it makes you less important to me. Kelly looked at me with confusion for a moment, her face showing that she didn't understand. What do you mean by that? I laughed and explained. I mean a woman who allows her partner to be with other people while she stays back or maybe joins them. I could see her wanting to argue, so I stopped her. Before you start, I want you to know that I don't want an open marriage. I hope this change to the agreement will calm your fears and help us get back to a loving place. I miss your gentle touch and your smiling face. I was probably laying it on thick, but I really hoped it sounded sincere to her, which it was. I was trying to save my marriage. Kelly's expression changed, showing a moment of sadness. This wasn't what she had hoped for, I could tell, but she still found a way to smile. You silly goose. I was never worried about you leaving me. I just wanted you to enjoy your fantasy. I'm sorry I didn't talk to you about it sooner. I thought it was a mistake to ask our friends to help make it happen, and for that, I apologized too. My mood brightened and I smiled back at her. You don't need to apologize, my love. It was a nice thought, and I appreciate you thinking of me. But like I said, I could never go through with it for the reasons I mentioned before. I was trying to win her over. It seemed like I had made my point, and now I wanted to keep the good feeling going. Kelly looked at the papers as if they were going to attack her. Do you still want to sign this document? She read it closely. Does it look like I want to send you broke? Kelly bit her lip. Well, yes and no. I know it's harder for you, but I might leave our marriage with nothing but the clothes on my back. But you would be paying me support for 10 years. She was confused. Why did you put that in there? That was the same question I asked Leonard when we were creating the document, too. He said it would help her accept the changes. Are your skirts clean? I asked. I nodded and said, Of course. He replied, Then you don't have a problem, do you? I thought that helping her accept was not what he really meant. I'm sure you'll agree that I made a mistake by bringing up the idea of us being with another person. It looked like I was unhappy in our marriage, but I'm not. I love being married to you, Kelly. I mentioned it so you could see that I'm not trying to push you into changing our agreement. I wasn't trying to be sarcastic or start a fight. I truly believe we need this to get through this tough time and to help our marriage grow stronger. Okay, maybe that wasn't entirely honest, but I didn't need to be completely clueless. Kelly seemed to break down, which confused me. I had told her about the wine, so I almost expected it, but I thought she would put up more of a fight. Wow. Here's another puzzle to try to understand how a woman's mind works. Okay, James, if this is what you need to fix things, I'll go along with it, but let me be clear. I don't need it. And if it leads to a divorce and you're the one who caused it, I'll throw that agreement in the trash. I honestly think that's not right, to say the least. I gave Kelly a sad but understanding smile. It may not seem like it, but I agree with you on that, I said before she could say more. Life has its unfair things, I'm afraid. Can you meet our lawyer tomorrow at 11:30 so he can witness and sign the paper? Kelly went to the kitchen to start dinner while I quietly checked the last calls on our home phone. As I expected, the last 4 were to her friends. She must have been either complaining or seeking advice. Either way, I had no doubt about what Kelly would do if I ever cheated in our marriage. I loved my wife deeply, but I also knew how she could be with anyone who upset her. That agreement would definitely be a topic if a divorce happened. We met 5 minutes before the hour, and Kelly made one last attempt to gain the upper hand. I hope this won't take long, James. I have a lot of shopping to do before the day ends. I hated this struggle for power, this fight to see who was stronger. I always saw Kelly as my equal in our marriage, and this was leaving a bad feeling in my stomach. I didn't understand why she couldn't see that talking and finding a middle ground was the key to a happy marriage, not this game of strength she seemed to enjoy. My eyebrow rose in surprise. All this has got me down, and I need some shopping therapy to cheer me up. I have a $15,000 gift card, and I plan to use it. I might even come close to using it all. So be ready when the bank bill arrives, and don't say I didn't warn you. She ended with a playful but stubborn smile. All right. This one isn't a win for me either. It's an expensive draw, but less than before. I felt sure I wouldn't come out of this winning, but $15,000 felt way too high. What is it with women and spending money? If it's not fake nails, it's surgery. Then there's fake everything else, and it all goes on their credit cards. I felt uneasy about what Kelly had said, but I nodded anyway. All for the good of our marriage, I told myself. I sighed without much excitement, thinking about the old joke about wives, condoms, and wallets. Months went by as I watched Kelly and her friend, who I started to call Trouble. I noticed that while she didn't end her friendship with him, she certainly kept her distance. I even began to talk to them a little more often, but just a little. I mean very little. We had finally moved past the hard part in our marriage. We saw them at parties, but they mostly stayed to themselves. Kelly would sometimes go over and talk, but she was never out of my sight. Things at home got better. Our love life improved a lot. I felt like I was winning big time. So why did I sense something bad was coming? Why are you looking at me like that? I understand how things work. Kelly could be bringing in more to get what she wants. Yeah, that other bad thing. Then she might pull back and leave me in the dust. I hate that feeling. I hate being careful, and I really hate that I was turning into my dad, the biggest skeptic of all. Leonard called me into his office 2 months later. Dang it, Leonard. Don't you want to stop all that junk food? How are we ever going to get that little person contest planned for the Christmas party? Not to mention, we might hurt ourselves. Leonard sat in his chair and looked at the young guy in front of him. No, I can't read minds. If I could, do you think I'd have a hard time with my wife? I knew that's what he was thinking, because he'd called me that many times before for similar comments, tossing his half-eaten jam donut into the box with the others, a silly grin on his face. He mumbled around the food in his mouth. Things must be good at home, James. What makes you think that? I asked. Leonard smiled a big grin and took his time swallowing before clearing his throat. Because you're back to teasing me about my height again. I told him, I keep saying I'm not short, I'm just a couple inches too tall for that, he said while trying to lick some jam off his mouth. Here's the rewritten text in simpler language. "Just so you know, I'm wearing size 10 loafers," he said with a casual shrug. I couldn't help but laugh. "Come on, boss. Maybe it's because I'm 6'4", but you look shorter than that. Are those special shoes? You get to go on a fun trip for 4 wonderful days and 3 quiet nights," Leonard laughed. "What? Oh no, I can't believe I said that. Where? Caxton Jackson Enterprises needs a new eco-friendly solution, and your little project is just what they want. But I think you'll need to change it a bit to fit their needs." "That's your job. It's your project, and I trust you to handle it," he said. "Oh man, Caxton, that sounds like a long way from nowhere. I take back everything I've said about you, Leonard. You're in trouble. How long did you say I need to stay there? And when can I leave? I know I'm in a tough spot, James." "It's why we get along so well. We both have many problems to deal with. Where would we be without them? They will see it through. You leave tomorrow. That's just enough time to get home, kiss your partner on the forehead, and pack a few bags before you go. This business could really make some money if we get it right. Listen, Leonard, I know you are a smart businessman, but I'm an engineer, not a salesman. Why do I have to go?" Leonard looked at me with a mix of humor and frustration. "I know you're my talented engineer, James, but my silly salesman Jeffers already did the sales talk. Now you need to clear up any questions they have and make sure that our offer fits their needs." "Got it," I said, feeling annoyed. "Yes, I understand. Caxton as soon as possible. I'll make it happen." "You didn't need to say good. Now hurry up and get going," he said, still grinning. I sensed that my luck was about to change for the worse. Kelly wasn't very happy about this trip, but that didn't surprise me. "Why so long, sweetheart? Most of your trips are 1 day or just overnight. What am I supposed to do alone for 4 nights?" "Well, it's actually 4 days and 3 nights, I explained. "And it means a good promotion and a pay raise instead of stock options this time. I have to figure out how to pay off that credit card for your therapy. But I can only do that if I handle this well. You'll have to make do like I will. Enjoy shopping and miss me until I get home Saturday afternoon." Kelly's frustration showed. "Don't even go there, James. I told you what would happen, so you have no one to blame but yourself. You better not make this a regular thing. You know I'm not good at keeping busy at night. I don't think my credit card can take another therapy session this soon." Kelly saw the surprised look on my face and laughed. "I'm just kidding, sweetie. I really don't like it when we argue and don't talk. I'll try to remember to call you every night." Caxton was just how I remembered it from years ago. There wasn't much to do but work hard and get home as soon as I could. Work had been tough, and they almost asked for too much. Trying to explain how my solvent breaks down molecules to the bosses was hard. Most of them couldn't tell H2O from O2. A lot of people mix those two up. H2O is what comes from your kitchen faucet, but I managed to explain it, met their needs, and helped Leonard out. It was Friday night, and I was relaxing in the hotel restaurant and bar. I had just spoken to Kelly. She said she missed me, and I tried to comfort her the best I could over the phone. Kelly asked me where I was eating that night, and I joked that the only decent place in town was where I was. The place looked old, but was clean and nice. It was really the only place you could eat and not get sick. I was sitting at the bar talking to a salesman, which wasn't too common for engineers like me. I was waiting for a table to open up. Just then, the guy beside me stood up and said goodnight. I was about to order another beer when a voice interrupted me. "Is this seat taken?" I turned to see a pretty redhead in her mid to late 20s. She was standing next to me and asking about the now open stool. Wow, she was really attractive. "No, it's all yours," I said, trying to sound smooth. She was dressed nicely, maybe a bit too fancy for this place. "Hey, I may be married, but I can still notice," I thought. "Are you waiting for someone?" I asked, just trying to make conversation. She smiled and said, "Yes and no. I was waiting outside for my date. He was supposed to be here a half hour ago. I thought I'd come in for a drink while I waited, but now I feel like I've been stood up." I got the bartender's attention. "Can I buy you a drink while you wait?" I asked. "That would be lovely. Thank you," she replied. She told the bartender she wanted a white wine. Then she turned to me. "My name's Sarah, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Sarah. I'm James, not Jim or Jimmy, just James." I ordered our drinks and tried to make small talk. She gave me that familiar look people give when I ask, "So do you come here often, Sarah?" I asked her more questions to keep her from asking the obvious one. Oh no, I really don't know why Bill chose this place to meet. I travel a lot, and this is the last place I want to be stuck for the night. My date is someone I knew from school. When he heard I would be in town, he convinced me to have dinner with him. You can't count on anyone these days. I understand. Are you from this area, James? Sarah asked while sipping her wine. We just met, and you're already making fun of me. I laughed. This place is the back of beyond, if you ask me. No, I'm not here for work like you. Luckily, I can leave tomorrow afternoon. A waiter came over and told me a table was now ready. I looked at Sarah and quickly thought, why not? Suddenly, that Newcastle song popped into my head. You know the one? Oh, please, just Google it. Would you honor me by having dinner with me, since your date did not show up? You'd be helping me out because I really dislike eating alone. I'm not sure how long you'll wait for another table. I could see a hint of doubt on her face before she relaxed. Oh, what the heck? He can jump in the lake. If he can't show up on time, he's not worth it. Thank you, James. I'd love to. Dinner was nice, mostly because I had someone to talk to. We shared our interests, both work and hobbies. I felt a bit uneasy when Sarah began to ask personal questions, but I avoided any awkward topics. Just as we finished dessert, I sensed Sarah had crossed a line. She made it clear she wanted to continue the night, maybe dancing or going somewhere more quiet. I raised my left hand, spun the ring on my finger, and smiled. I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm a happily married man, Sarah. Still, I appreciate the compliment. You're a very lovely woman, but I'm loyal to my wife. Sarah's face turned red. Oh, I'm sorry for being so bold. Please forgive me. I've been on the road so long that finding someone to... How do I say this without feeling awkward? It's hard. I found you attractive, smart, and funny. You're really a breath of fresh air here. I didn't see the ring on your finger. I hope you can forgive me. You must really love your wife. The thought of how flustered she was trying to apologize made me smile. Yes, Sarah, I do. Also, I noticed you aren't wearing a ring, but I accepted your apology anyway. Don't worry about it. I've enjoyed your company. I'm glad to be here with you, at least as a backup for your missing date. Your company has always been fun and interesting. As I mentioned before, I really dislike eating alone. It would have been nice to have someone like you around for my boring meals. When I got home, Kelly met me at the door wearing a black lace outfit. She had on stockings and high heels, and not much else. They say that women like to look good for others. Well, let me tell you, the less they wear, the more I notice. Okay, so she wasn't just in heels or holding a drink, but it was close enough that I didn't mind. I had a feeling my workday wasn't over yet. I smiled widely. You're right, love. You have to make up for the 3 lonely nights I had to deal with. You'll be lucky if I don't wear you out, I chuckled. At least she was there offering something. Well, wouldn't you? We are making progress, aren't we? This is the kind of extra work I wouldn't mind doing, sweetheart. Follow me and I'll show you, Kelly said, grabbing my tie. Uh-oh. The end of the earth sounds too far. The bedroom is just fine. Kelly took me to an amazing place. The next day, I walked into Leonard's office feeling great with my head held high. Who's the man? Leonard looked at me for a second, and I wondered what was bothering him. I see you think you're the man, but all I see is a giant giraffe. He looked at me with a smirk. I assume your trip went well? It couldn't have been better. I have to go back in a couple of weeks to finish up some details. But other than that, it was a success. Stanton Chemicals will be looking at a good profit this quarter. I also want to thank you for helping me with my home issues. Things have never been better. Leonard paused, which felt unusual, but then he smiled and waved his hand as if to brush off my thanks. It's easier to see things clearly when you're not wearing rose-colored glasses. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but held back. I guess 2 failed marriages can change a man. I'll make sure you get a little extra in your paycheck from now on. Good job, son. Really appreciated. The weeks flew by, and my home life returned to how it was before the trouble began. I was getting ready for my second trip to Caxton, and I worried about what Kelly would say about me being gone again. It should just be overnight, but if things go wrong, I might have to stay longer. I promised to come home as fast as I could. To my surprise, Kelly smiled. I understand, sweetheart. We made it through your last trip. The playful spark in her eyes was clear. Barely. So this trip should be easy as long as you take your vitamins to avoid any surprises when you get back. I know you work hard to give us a nice life, and I'm grateful for it, sweetheart. I chuckled. I can see I'll need to ask Leonard for the whole week off this time. This trip wasn't any better than the last one. I had increased my workload so I could leave this awful place a day early, if I could. Long hours and tighter schedules made it a tiring trip. Tonight's phone call home was my only chance to relax again. I sat at my table looking at the menu, feeling lost, when the waitress interrupted my thoughts. "Excuse me, Mr. Barrymore, would you like some company for dinner? There's a lady at the bar who's alone, and I thought—" She trailed off as my eyes were drawn to the woman she mentioned. Wow, if that was the one I was looking at. I quickly scanned the restaurant, and of course she was. She was the only woman eating alone, and she was very attractive. "Send her over. Eating alone is no fun," I said. The waitress made the introduction. "Mr. Barrymore, this is Miss Stevens." The waitress helped her with her chair. "Would you like a menu, Miss Stevens?" The woman nodded while reaching out her hand. "My first name is Michelle. Only my friends call me Mickey." "It's great to meet you, Mr. Barrymore. I hope I'm not interrupting your dinner." I nearly knocked over my chair as I stood up to greet her. "No, not at all. I'm happy to have company during dinner. My name is James. Please sit." I was so caught up in the moment that I forgot to mention that I prefer to be called James, not Jim. Have you ever met someone you thought was perfect? Well, I can say I have now. This woman seemed to be exactly what I could dream of if I ordered her. She was tall, slim, with long, silky blonde hair, and, well, you get the idea. I was almost worried that my mouth was hanging open. She was stunning. Our food arrived as drinks were poured. We talked, even if it was a bit awkward because I was a little lost in my thoughts. Don't look at me like that. Looking at Michelle was like seeing a perfect picture. Eating took 2 of my brain cells, leaving me with just 3 to think. You're right. The other 20 were nowhere to be found, probably busy looking at the lovely woman sitting across from me. No doubt my friend Norman would have turned into a complete fool by now. And that's not a bad thing about Norman. But you get what I mean. Thankfully, those 3 thinking cells were trying hard to keep me out of trouble. But there was something about this situation that didn't quite make sense to me. Once I got past the excitement of meeting someone who looked like a goddess, I noticed how serious I had become. Michelle paused, holding a fork full of food in her delicate fingers, ready to take a bite. "Something on your mind, James?" she asked. I put down my knife and fork and wiped my mouth with a napkin, trying to organize my thoughts. I wanted to figure out what was bothering me. Instead of eating, I wanted to talk to the other 3 people at the table and brainstorm ideas. Okay, maybe brainstorm is too strong. It was more like light thinking, but I felt a spark of intelligence. Michelle calling me James instead of Jim, like everyone else, caught my attention. It made me wonder why she did that. I was feeling a bit confused about my recent luck. See? I told you I get formal when I'm serious. Michelle put her fork down and took a sip of her wine. "Confused? I'm not sure what you mean, James," she said, once again using my full name. It felt strange, and I suddenly sensed something was off. My mind was racing, and I knew I needed to focus. With all my thoughts in one place, I looked around the restaurant. I took a deep breath and tried to sound calm. I was here a couple of weeks ago and had dinner with another lovely woman. Now I'm sitting here with you and wondering what I did to deserve such good luck again. "You have a suspicious mind, James," Michelle said, tilting her head with curiosity. I might be a bit paranoid, but that didn't mean I wasn't careful. For the first time, I wished she would just call me Jim. It made me feel uneasy. My sister had just had a baby and was still in the hospital. I came to visit her but didn't want to cook for myself. So I went to the only restaurant in town, hoping to find good food and company. Is that so strange? I smiled. Not at all, Michelle. It's just that you... Well, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem perfect to me. You look tall, about 6 feet, with legs that seem to reach up to your eyes. You have the most beautiful blue eyes that almost shine, and your long blonde hair flows like silk. Sorry if that's too personal. But your other nice qualities are great too. And that dress looks so good on you that it fits like it was made just for you. Michelle blushed when I talked about how she looked. Why, James, are you trying to charm me? She blinked her eyes playfully. Thank you for your nice words, but for starters, I'm just under 5'11". I try not to let my vanity take over, but like most women, I do like to feel wanted. She took another bite of her food. I sat quietly and waited for her to finish. Memories of Caroline's attempt to charm me popped into my mind. Now, looking back, they seemed pretty silly compared to Michelle. She looked ready to say, "What are we waiting for?" I almost laughed, but kept it inside. I realized that Michelle's whole wardrobe was made to catch attention. Her hand movements were even more graceful than Caroline's. This woman knew how to work it. "I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong idea. You have every right to feel good about yourself." "But that's not what has me curious about you," I said, nodding toward a man at a corner table. "He seems a bit more interested in us than the others." I understood why. I have to admit, I felt good seeing his jealousy. I knew I would have to tone it down later just to seem less proud. That man looked familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd seen him. It was clear that Michelle knew the impact she had on men, and it showed in her smile. But she also looked a little nervous about where our talk was heading. "I see 4 empty tables, but I understand why you want company," I continued. "You look no older than 25, and I'm 10 years older than you. I see at least 2 guys here around your age. They are better looking and dressed better too," I said. Michelle corrected me again. "I turn 30 next month, but thank you for the compliment." She was trying to shift my focus. I nodded and went on. "I don't want to upset you, Michelle, but I feel there's more to this dinner than I should know. Remember that other beautiful woman I mentioned? I have to admit she wasn't quite your level, but I like tall blondes. She made it clear that if I was interested, the night could have gone in a different direction. Now here I was with my own beautiful Venus de Milo right in front of me, almost offering me the same chance. "Can you help me understand this?" I asked. Michelle took a big sip of her wine and looked away for a moment. "You don't think very highly of how others see you, Mr. Barrymore." I noticed she changed the way she spoke. It was like she was taking a step back for some reason I couldn't understand. But I wanted to assure her that she stood out here in this restaurant. Michelle was still trying to be professional, I believed that. Then a terrible thought hit me. What if she was just putting on an act to get customers? I really hope she's not doing that. But then another scary thought came to mind, one that made me feel even worse. So I decided to test her. "Oh, my dear, you are good at this, but not quite good enough." That wasn't a knock on her skills, though. I had my reasons. My dad used to say, "Many people in the world will try to trick you. Don't trick yourself, too." Michelle just listened quietly. I know I have flaws, probably more than I like to admit. But I'm clear-headed about how others see me. There are at least a few men in this room who are much more attractive. I shared what had gone on with my wife over the last few months. I could see Michelle's expression change as I talked about my wife's friends and the prenup. "So what you're telling me is that you think your wife is trying to trick you," she said. "In short, yes. If it weren't for that, I would have been completely clueless about your real purpose here. I was right. There is more to this night than just good food." Michelle kept her hands in her lap, looking serious. "Your feelings are not wrong, Mr. Barrymore." Here I was, thinking I was clever, and her words completely changed how I felt. It seemed the time had come for the truth. "I work for an agency that looks into cheating spouses. We set a trap and wait for the unfaithful partner to take the bait." I could tell my face showed my upset. "Before you judge me harshly, let me clarify. I have never and will never sleep with the men I am hired to entice. The man in the corner is my protector in case you get angry about this situation." She probably said that just so I wouldn't get mad. I nodded, feeling relieved that she wasn't what I first thought. Then I remembered where I had seen that man before. It was here. I recalled a time when I was talking with him before he gave up his seat to the woman. What was her name? I snapped my fingers, trying to remember. Sarah? Yes, Sarah, if I'm recalling correctly. When Michelle arrived, she nodded at Mr. Barrymore. "Yes, her name is Sarah, and we work together. It's safer and easier to keep the target close than to waste time trying to get him alone. Your wife reached out to us because she thinks you might be having affairs when you're away for work. She gave us your picture and where you are, and then it was up to us. This time, she mentioned you like tall blonde women. So that's why I'm here. It looks like we've both been set up." I agreed with a grunt. "That's why you don't shorten my name like most people do. Sarah knows I prefer the name James. Am I right?" Michelle gave a shy smile and nodded. My feelings changed quickly from happy to sad and then to annoyed. but I kept my voice steady. It surprises and upsets me to think a woman like you would do this kind of work. Why are you involved in this? It was Michelle's turn to look away. You just mentioned how I look, and I don't want to seem proud, but you've pointed out that I am pretty much perfect. I nodded. But there's always a catch, isn't there? You're right, James. All this beauty and glamour comes at a cost. Her words caught me off guard. She saw more than what was on the surface. Even though she was attractive, she knew what really mattered. But isn't that true for all of us? Kevin, my partner over there, is a great example of that cost. You said he is better looking than I am. You're right. Like me, he can have any woman he wants. Michelle wiped her eyes with a tissue. She seemed upset, and I didn't know why, so I waited for her to calm down. But with that handsome face comes a big ego, and that can be very unattractive inside. He shows that saying, beauty is only skin deep, while ugly goes all the way to the bone. He's the bad boy type, which can be exciting for a night, but not for a good husband. When it comes to that kind of thing, he can't compare to you, James. You're much better. I watched as Michelle tried to control her feelings, a single tear rolling down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away with her tissue. Even with my looks, I can't compete with that. I can't keep their attention for long. That's how my beauty can be a double-edged sword. Michelle took a moment to gather herself. Men like you, who are really kind inside, often feel scared by how I look. I have been married 2 times to men who are as good-looking as Kevin, including my last partner. So, having 2 marriages and 1 long-term relationship in 10 years is not a great record, James. All of them have cheated for one silly reason or another. That's why I chose this work. I really hate dishonesty in relationships. I sat and thought about Michelle's confession, and I felt sorry for what she was going through. I apologize for judging you too quickly, Michelle. I have to admit I feel a bit jealous, and it hurts to say that I have failed in this way. Michelle smiled sadly. What did you say to Sarah? Don't be too hard on yourself. We all have our struggles. Mine might be easier than those of others. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stuck to your beliefs and didn't give in to temptation. It gives me hope that there might be a true partner out there for me. Am I right in thinking you haven't lost your way and probably never doubted that? I lowered my head and smiled. She almost got to me. I have to tell you, Michelle, if I ever went back on my wedding vows, you would be the only woman who could make me do it. I know that every guy on this planet would say I'm crazy for not going after you with everything I have, but I have my values, and I won't let them slip, even for you. Just so you don't feel too bad, if I hadn't figured out your reasons by the time dinner was over, I would have gone back to my room and hit my head against the wall, cursing my own values, which would have given me a headache. I laughed. Tears were falling from Michelle's chin as she chuckled at my comment. Thank you, James. Thank you for bringing back my belief in love and the importance of marriage. I'm just sorry it has cost you so much. That hit me harder than I thought it would. I had to admit that I wasn't really thinking about my marriage while talking to Michelle. It bothered me that while I hadn't been unfaithful in a physical way, my mind had wandered. I decided to push that thought aside for now and just enjoy the moment. I found joy in looking at this amazing woman while still having a wonderful conversation with Michelle on many different topics. Still the optimist, I felt comforted knowing that even though this dinner had shaken my trust in my loving wife, at least I had the chance to meet and talk with my ideal woman. As dinner came to a close and Michelle got ready to leave, I took her hand and gave her a light kiss on the cheek. I will remember this night for the rest of my life, Michelle. If it makes you feel any better, I believe your beauty goes deeper than just what we see on the outside. If things were different, I would have liked to know how much you can handle. I know that sounds odd, but thank you for a nice evening. Michelle smiled brightly as she stood up to leave. Then she turned back to me with a grin. You know, one of your best traits, James. I shook my head and shrugged. You have a special way of making people feel important. Sarah mentioned it to me before I met you, and I agree. Kevin doesn't quite match your looks, James, but when it comes to personality, he's not even close to you. She winked at me and left, making me feel both happy and a bit sad. When I got back to my room, I closed the door. I had kept my anger in check all evening, mostly because of Michelle's charm, but now I was alone. I let my frustrations out by grabbing a glass and throwing it against the wall. I was mad at Kelly. I needed to call home, but I wasn't sure I could stay calm. I didn't want to give anything away, I still didn't have proof, but things were becoming clearer, and I needed more than just feelings. To find out if Kelly was innocent or not, I had to keep her in the dark, just like she had done with me. I hated the mind games people play. "Hi, sweetie. How are you?" I didn't trust myself to say more than that. Kelly giggled, and that made me even angrier and sick to my stomach. "How do you think I'm doing? Are you coming home as planned?" I felt like I could reach through the phone and shake her. Why was she asking that? The only reason she'd think I wouldn't be home is if she thought I was with Michelle and planned to stay longer. I needed a moment to calm down, so I said I wouldn't be coming home tomorrow, but the day after. "I'll call you when I know more, but you can count on at least 2 more days. Can you handle that, sweetie?" I wanted to break the phone as I spoke. Kelly sounded like she was upset but accepted my answer. "I guess there's not much we can do about it. Just get home as soon as you can, baby." That wasn't like the Kelly I knew. She usually got upset over things like this. She should be really bothered, not so laid back about it. I felt a strange chill when she called me sweetie back, but I managed to reply. "I will, sweetie. I miss you, my love. I'm very tired from work and all I want to do is go to bed. I'll be home as soon as I can." That part was true. I had finished what I needed to do here and planned to leave on the first flight the next morning. Once I considered the flight time and travel, I should be home by lunchtime. The next afternoon, I walked into Leonard's office and dropped a pair of sunglasses on his desk. Leonard had some good news for me. I hoped he wouldn't notice the glasses right away. "What are these for, James?" he asked, picking them up and holding them up to the light. Looking through the lenses, I said, "Just letting you know that the good times are over. Leonard, I have a feeling you were more right than I wanted to believe." Leonard's face turned unhappy, and he tossed the sunglasses into the trash next to his desk. "I thought you weren't coming back for another day. You found out for sure then?" I shook my head. "Not for certain, but I have serious doubts about her loyalty, enough to have one of your guys watch her." "How did you know I wouldn't be back so soon?" Leonard leaned back in his chair and linked his fingers behind his head. "Okay, James, fate has dealt you a tough hand. But the real question is, do you lie down and accept it, or do you pick yourself up and keep on living? What will you do?" Leonard didn't answer my question, but that was typical for him. He ignored questions he thought weren't important, so I was sure I would find out if it was important. "For now, I need to keep it together. I'll go home and act like I know nothing, just like Kelly thinks I am, while I look for an investigator to check on her." This was going to be difficult. I didn't know if I could stay calm until I found out what she was really doing. I was never good at pretending in school. The last thing I want to do right now is act like I don't know and have to follow her. Who knows who might be with her? Leonard leaned forward, looking tense. "I might be able to help," he said. I just stared at him until he spoke again. "I took it upon myself to do some digging for you. I knew you were too involved and in love to do it yourself, so I did." I sat down heavily. My legs felt weak even as I shared my worries with Leonard. I secretly hoped there was some good reason for everything that happened, but Leonard's serious look felt like my worst fears were about to be confirmed. I felt a heavy weight in my stomach as I waited for him to continue. "I knew something was off from your first trip," Leonard said. He seemed hesitant, but I told him I appreciated his help. "While you were away, my guy kept an eye on your wife. He didn't find any proof of trouble, but she spent a lot of time next door. Many people came and went. I didn't know what to think about it, so I did something risky. I tapped your phone line to find out what was happening. That's how I got all the details." Leonard slid 2 cassette tapes across the desk to me. "We don't have photos of her doing anything, but here are pictures of all the people who came and went while your wife was next door." Leonard said this as he handed me an envelope. I opened it and looked at the photos. "Don't worry about the phone tap. I'll sign whatever you need. It's my phone and I pay the bills so I can do it if I want." Looking at the photos, I angrily said, "That's them, all of them, plus a couple of others I met sometime else. Did you listen to the talks? Is that why you thought I was coming home tomorrow or the day after?" Leonard nodded. "Yeah, I heard your talk with Kelly last night. She called someone named Carol and set up a party for tonight next door at Pam's place. If you weren't coming home, I was thinking about trying to get pictures for you, though I knew it was a long shot. My guy said they kept the blinds shut tight, so it would be tough to get anything." It's up to you, James. If you don't want to wait, we can go tonight. I sat in the chair and looked down at my feet, feeling defeated. What a mess, Leonard. What did I do wrong? Leonard fiddled with a clear box on his desk. I know, James. You don't deserve this, my friend. No one does. Don't blame yourself. From what I saw, you treated her well. She just got involved with the wrong crowd. And that's not your fault. She's not a child, James. She needs to take responsibility for what she does. Do you want to listen to the tape by yourself? I don't know. It doesn't matter because you heard it already. You being here might keep me from wrecking your office with my anger. Leonard understood that I was making statements, not asking questions, so he didn't reply. Listening to the tape was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The jokes and lack of respect made me really angry and sick at the same time. I had sometimes thought I was partly to blame for her choices. That was before I heard her last call with Caroline. With every word from Kelly, I felt my love for her slip away, getting closer to disappearing completely. It took a few days to get the tape ready for your first trip, Leonard said as he put a cassette into the player. It brought me back to that time. It was Friday night before you returned on Saturday. It doesn't prove much unless you know what they are really saying, and it's not something I could take to court. Leonard paused and asked again, Are you sure you want to hear this? I looked at him and said, No way, Leonard. I don't want to hear it. My wife is seeing everyone in the neighborhood, but that's not for me to decide now, is it? Leonard, with his serious face, looked like he was thinking about his own marriage problems. I'm sorry, Leonard. I shouldn't have snapped at you like that, I said. Leonard still looked serious, but there was some regret on his face. It's okay, buddy. I get where you're coming from. It's really hard to deal with. As you know, I've been through this twice, and I can't tell you, the second time was just as hard as the first. You talk too much. Just press play, you jerk. I looked up at him, and he gave me a sad smile. Hi, Pam. Is everything ready for tonight? Sure is. What time will you come over? If she calls on time, it will be like Wednesday night. My stomach felt tight. She didn't even wait one night. Who knows with who? I remembered what she said when I got back from my first trip. You have a lot of work to do to make up for the 3 lonely nights I had. Yeah, right. She wasn't so lonely now. You're going to wear us out, girl. Just have those cards warmed up and ready. I feel lucky tonight. We will be waiting, came Kel's reply. Leonard hit the eject button. Is that all we got from your first trip? Not much, I know. The rest is yours and her call that night. There's nothing for the next day either. It would have been good to have the wiretap ready before you left. I didn't want to say anything until I knew for sure. Like I told you before, it sounds like she's just going over for a game of cards. That doesn't mean she is being unfaithful. If it weren't for the photos of all the players, I wouldn't have kept the tap going. Leonard put in the second tape. This one is a little worse, he said. I was about to find out that Leonard had a knack for saying things lightly when they were serious. He pressed play, and at first I heard her talking about her mom and some charities that Kelly was part of. Then came the call from the night before, and it felt like my world fell apart. Yeah, Carol, it's me. I just got off the phone with Jack. Ash, Jimmy. He's staying away longer. Are you sure? That's not like him, right? Of course I'm sure. The blonde woman has finally caught his eye. Don't jump to conclusions, Kel. Remember Carol. He's far away in Caxton, after all. You should have heard him talk about his first trip. There's only one reason he's staying longer. It's because he thinks he might have a chance with that woman. Just like Flynn with that woman who looked rough, he probably hasn't even gotten close to her yet. I understand how he thinks. He'll be careful so he doesn't scare her away. If he even gets that far with her, it doesn't really matter to us. The plan is there, and I will keep him in check. It does seem promising, though. It's up to you, Kel. You bet it does, men. There's that saying. Men think with 2 heads but have enough blood to use only one at a time. I always figured he wouldn't be able to resist that blonde woman. We picked her based on how you described her. She's exactly the girl he dreams about. We are lucky with that choice. I feel like celebrating. How about you make me a nice sandwich? I don't know, Kel. The last thing we want is to act too fast, sweetheart. We all agree that the last 6 months with you have been amazing, but we should stay calm like we have been. We really don't want stiff Jimmy boy thinking you're playing with him. I know, Carol, but I'm feeling really excited. I could just shout. I was so happy when he shared his fantasy. It was a bit silly, but I saw some chances in it. All that show he put on just annoyed me. The first woman they picked wasn't his type. Sure, he may be hard to please, but I give him credit for knowing what he wants. He married me, didn't he? There was silence on the other end of the phone, then laughter. I think you need to check your choices a bit, Kel. He may have his faults, but your pride is showing just a bit. Yeah, you told me that from the start when you convinced me it would be better to have him around. By the way, we all missed the mark on that one. Well, you could have found another club to join instead. Not likely, sweetheart. I don't want him getting anything I'm not ready to give at home. That's why I followed your idea to let you all try to win him over. That way, I still have control over what I allow. More laughter followed by some shuffling sounds. Just a second, Carol, I'm making tea. A little more silence. Okay, I'm back. We stopped having fun while he was home because he wouldn't go for any of you and got upset when we pushed him. And I have to admit, there was no way I would have agreed to that crazy plan if we hadn't worked together to think of trapping him. I've really missed our fun times. He's not in town, so we can do what we want until he gets back. It's up to you, sweetheart. But the guys won't mind at all. They love nothing more than enjoying that time with the girls. The girls and I sure love our time together, especially with your sharp tongue. I'll have the guys shuffle the cards before you get here to see who goes first. Show off your charms, Kel. Caroline laughed. By now I was really angry, and I could feel my heart beating so fast that it thumped in my head. I wasn't looking at Leonard, but I knew he was watching me get more and more upset. I focused on a brass urn in his office and thought about how good it would feel to hit those guys. Oh, and tell the guys I want my favorite dessert. One from each of them. I want to see how Jimmy reacts when I really go after him. If I decide to give him my own special treat. Leonard must have seen my pale face and threw his trash can to me. I got sick in 2 big heaves. Caroline laughed. I can't believe you really dislike him that much and are still married to him. Of course, I don't hate him. I just hate losing to him. He's annoyed me with all this nonsense. So I plan to get back at him. Can you imagine? He told me he didn't want to cook for me. That made me so mad. But I had to stay calm and make him think twice. I had no idea what he meant. I tried to remember our previous talk, and she seemed to pause for a moment. What does he think I am? Some weak-minded fool like that woman he's trying to date now? Does he really think I'd let him do that? He'll be lucky if I don't. Sorry, but there was silence on the phone as I gritted my teeth and spat into the bucket. Then Caroline laughed. You've already got him, Kel. More laughter came from the women. Well, look at that, I do. After Kelly calmed down, she explained more. If I let him know I know more, he'd just bug me to do strange things. They laughed again. I felt like getting up and yelling at my dear wife. But you do like strange things, Kel? Caroline asked, still laughing. I know that, but I need something to keep him wanting me. Plus, I get all the love I need from your guys. Leonard could see my face, but I couldn't look at him as they calmed down. Don't joke with me, Carol. You can't tell me you do everything Ben wants. Of course not. But we both know it's all about want and need. As long as we wives keep the wanting more than what they have, we're in charge. Luckily, I don't have too much trouble with my big, handsome jerk. A little affection now and then, and he's as happy as he can be. That's what I'm thinking exactly, Carol. By the time I'm done with Jim, he'll be the kind of husband I want. Yes, dear. No, dear. 3 bags full, dear. He'll do anything I ask, just so I don't make his life hard, like his dad's first wife did to him. If not, then he'll be paying me to mess with whoever I want for the next 10 years. But don't get me wrong, he's great in other ways. He takes good care of me and helps around the house. I really appreciate him for that. My problem is with our bedroom life and his annoying attitude. Once those things change, he will be just what a girl like me needs to be happy. I was still feeling sick into Leonard's bucket when the tape finished, and Leonard gave me some tissues. Don't take this the wrong way, buddy, but it's nice to see you're just as upset about that phone call as I was. For a moment, I thought I'd made a mistake giving you the bucket. This was the second time I'd heard it, and I still felt awful. I couldn't look up for a while. I hate to say it, but I was crying hard. My only comfort was that Leonard had been in my shoes before and understood how I felt. Still, it bugged me that I wasn't strong enough to handle it. Unless you've been through it, it's hard to understand how it can hurt your self-esteem. We spent the rest of the day brainstorming how to break up this party, and we finally found one idea that seemed easy to pull off, but would have a big effect. It was going to be easier than I thought, especially with Leonard's help. I waited in the shadows, getting ready for the right moment to step in. I felt jittery, like I could take on a whole army. I calmed myself by thinking of all my friends supporting me. I recognized a man from the photos as he parked his car in my driveway. What a jerk. I have to give him credit for being bold, but he was clearly not smart. He messily adjusted himself, probably thinking it was fine to park in my drive while he was here to see my wife. As he walked back, I stepped out of the bushes and confronted him, pushing him back against a car parked on the street. I growled at him. "Okay, buddy. I know where you're headed and why." He was caught completely off guard. "Get off me, you jerk!" I kept pushing him down. I felt lighter when I saw fear in his eyes. "Steve, right? Here's the deal. I'll go easy on you if you help me out." Looking at the three of us, he had a sickly look on his face. He might have been a sleazy guy, but he wasn't dumb. He knew who I was and what it meant. Recognizing me as Kelly's husband made him understand the situation. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I could just walk away and you can't prove anything." "Of course you think that, you fool. You're parked in my driveway, so if you go in there, I will call the police for trespassing. I have pictures of you with my wife from last time you were sneaking around. How do you think I knew you were back here tonight? While you're sitting in jail, I will also add you to my lawsuit for causing problems in my marriage, along with the other guys." Steve laughed weakly. "Don't say that. You've been watching too many detective shows or legal dramas. Get real. We don't have those kinds of laws here in Australia." I smiled in a way that made it clear I meant business. I thought that if you were foolish enough to be with someone else's wife, you might not even know what loss of consortium means. The look on Steve's face showed he didn't understand. Just like I thought. In America, they call it gas. We call it petrol. It's really the same thing. But what it means is that you will be paying off a big debt for a long time, along with all the other losers in here. That is, if you don't follow my directions. I knew I was bluffing a bit. I wasn't sure how a lawsuit would actually work, and the only picture I had of him was from when he was entering the house where Kelly was already inside, which wouldn't help in court. Steve gave in. "What do I get if I help you take her down? As I said, you get to leave without any trouble, and I suggest you keep walking. In fact, run." Me, along with Trent, the private investigator, and Colin, a police officer who is friends with Leonard, were hiding close by while Steve nervously knocked on the front door. Chad opened the door and welcomed Steve inside. "Welcome to the House of Trouble. Come in and take a number. We have one girl available tonight." I felt sick at his words about Kelly, my supposed loving wife. Chad was laughing so much that before he could close the door, I burst in, followed by Trent with his camera ready to take pictures. Colin had his badge out, ready to handle anything that might happen. All you could hear was the sound of the camera and the bright flashes of light. Wow, he must have it on automatic. It's funny what you think about in moments like this, and I almost burst out laughing at the picture of Trent diving into the room like a spy. Kelly was with multiple people as Trent started taking pictures all around. Kelly's eyes went wide when she saw me watching, and she struggled to get away. I guess it's hard when you can't escape. Then she rolled awkwardly over the couch, trying to hide. Benjamin just stood there with a silly, smug expression on his face. I almost laughed again at her silly behavior. What did she think? I couldn't believe she didn't see what was happening. That woman is so clueless. She popped her head up, looking surprised. "Oh no, not my dog! This can't be real!" That was when everything went crazy. People started diving for cover. Kelly was hiding behind the couch, trying to find something to cover herself. You shouldn't do that, I thought. Chad just stood there, shocked by how quickly things changed. Who are these people? What do you think you're doing? You can't just walk into my home. This is illegal, Barrymore. I'll take you to court for this. I looked at Chad, who was standing there without clothes. I saw Pam trying to get out of a strange harness. Wow, this is messed up. Well, we have to handle this somehow. Chad looked really sad and angry at the same time. That amused me. Steve had run out as soon as they came in, and no one even noticed. I smirked at Chad. You're right about court, but it won't be me getting in trouble. I turned to Trent. Get what we need. Yeah, mate. We've got plenty here. This is breaking and entering, you know. Anything you take will not be allowed as evidence in court. You don't have anything, and we both know it. Chad's face showed fear and anger. I took out a small tape recorder from my pocket. This was the one I wanted to buy for a long time. I thought this was a good reason to spend the 50 bucks. Senior Sergeant Peters had told me that I needed proof of invitation, or it could look like a home invasion. I didn't care. We'd figure out the legal stuff later. I pressed rewind, then play. Welcome to the House of Harlots. Come in and take a number. Sounds like an invitation to me. Senior Sergeant Peters, what do you think? Colin showed his badge and laughed. This could be no clearer if it were gold-plated. I sneered at Chad as he turned pale. You're in trouble. Start counting your money. While all this was happening, the others were finding clothes, trying to hide. Kelly was crying and struggling to get into her shirt, still unable to find her pants. It made me feel sick to see my wife like this. I walked to the table and noticed Kelly's purse standing there. I found her keys and phone while looking through it. Besides the usual stuff she keeps, I found a few dollars, which I decided to leave behind. There's $9 here, which is about $1.50 for every year of our marriage. Important. Just think about the scene in front of us. You aren't even worth $2,300 to me. You're just a foolish witch. Don't bother coming back home. You don't have one anymore. Kelly stopped what she was doing. Please, sweetie, don't say that. But I told her to be quiet. She was acting like a child. There was nothing she could say that I wanted to hear. I picked up her credit card and threw it at her. It flew in a nice curve and hit the couch just in front of her, making her flinch. That card is only good for scratching your problems now. Plus, all your cards and bank accounts are frozen until our divorce case is done. I hope whatever you got was worth it. Kelly fell to the floor and cried hard. Leonard and I were sitting in our favorite bar. You know, Kelly keeps calling and leaving me messages to talk. I've deleted all of them. I can't think of one reason she could give that would change anything. But you know what really surprises me? Leonard took a drink of his beer. No, my friend, I know what surprises me, and I can guess what surprises you. You still love her, right? I nodded. Yeah, that's part of it. But what about Steve? I must have scared him. He did exactly what I told him and ran away. Well, he didn't drive away. His car is still sitting in my front yard, so I can't even get into my own garage. Leonard looked at me blankly. Yeah, that's a bit of my fault. You see, I parked behind him when you guys went next door to break up the party. Steve ran out of the house like he was in a hurry. He saw his car wasn't going anywhere and just took off on foot. I have no idea what he was thinking. I don't think he knew either. He just wanted to get out of there as fast as he could. Leonard chuckled, but I asked in a sad voice, How long will it hurt? Leonard's face got serious as he drew circles on the bar with the bottom of his beer bottle. Speaking from experience, James, the truth is it doesn't stop hurting right away. It will take some time, but you can get through it with help from good friends. Trust me, I'm proof that it works. If it weren't for you and some of my other friends, I might not have made it through some tough times. I nodded sadly as I looked at Leonard's kind face. 6 years to build that marriage, and it took her just 6 months to break it apart. It took me weeks to finally let it go. Leonard put a hand on my shoulder. Look at it this way, James. It's always the darkest before dawn. I wasn't sure if it was Leonard's serious face or what, but I looked at him for a minute and then started to laugh. Where do you come up with this stuff, Leonard? That has to be the most boring thing I have ever heard. Leonard smiled as he saw me feeling better. I had to admit, whenever I was sad, my sense of humor often saved me. Being so high up in the air where the brain gets less oxygen must be making you a little slow. I've been married twice and have 2 ex-wives, and I've heard all their stories more than once. I have more stories to share. Do you want to hear them? No, thanks. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. Have you talked to Colin? Leonard shrugged. Yeah. He asked if I was with you last week. I told him we went fishing to let you escape from everything for a bit. Why? He asked me the same thing. Did he say why? Leonard took a sip of his beer. Nope. He just nodded and said he'd see me later. Are you curious? I raised my beer bottle. Not really, especially not about my ex-wives. May they all be unhappy. We had just clinked our bottles together. So it's true then? You two have broken up? A woman's voice came from behind me. I saw Leonard silently say, Oh no, this could be awkward. Do you want to tell me who it is? I held up my hand to stop him. Hello, Marcy. How did you find me? Marcy laughed lightly. Where else would you be? You only drink at the tavern, so who is to blame here? I hadn't turned around yet and was looking at the bottles behind the bar. I knew I had to talk to Kelly's parents soon, but I was hoping to avoid it. Okay, let me get this straight. Kelly is likely at your place, upset and saying I'm awful, and I still own the house and everything in it, thanks to the prenuptial agreement. You're a smart woman, Marcy. You can figure it out. It went quiet, and Leonard seemed a bit uncomfortable. To make him feel better, I called Gary, the bartender. Another beer for me and a Chardonnay for the lady, please. I patted Leonard's arm. Stay here while I have a talk with Kelly's mom. Can you bring the drinks when they are ready? Leonard nodded and went back to looking at the bar. Sure, buddy. I walked over to a quiet table and pulled out a chair for Marcy. A little more private, right? Marcy nodded and took the seat. What did that silly girl of mine do wrong? I sat down and nodded. I won't go into details, but yes, it's about as bad as it can get. I do have pictures if you really want to see proof. Marcy looked down at her lap and raised her hand. No, I don't want to see how my daughter has messed up her marriage. My mind is already racing with ideas. I think Marcy felt hurt by this as much as I did. She stayed quiet for a minute, then spoke so softly that I almost didn't hear her. I'm sorry, James. I never thought Kelly would cheat on her marriage, especially after knowing what I have been through. Leonard brought our drinks and quietly went back to the bar to give us some privacy. Just then, my cell phone rang. I looked and saw it was Marcy's home number. I showed the phone to her. Can you answer it, please, James? But put it on speaker and don't let her know I'm here. It won't be Conroy. He's at work. I placed the phone on the table and pressed the speaker button. Hello, James. Is that you, sweetheart? Kelly's voice was shaky. Yeah. Can I come home? We need to talk. This is all a big mistake. No one needs to know what happened. They made me do those things. I only love you, sweetheart. I truly do. It was all their fault. I'm so sorry you got hurt. Please, we have to talk. You have to let me explain what happened. You always said we could solve any problem by talking. Please, I'll be the best wife ever. I'll never make you worry again. Marcy was taking a pen from her bag and turned a bar coaster over while Kelly pleaded with me. She wrote damage control and pointed to the phone. I nodded and asked, Who? Don't you want to know what you did, Kelly? There was silence for a moment, and I nudged Marcy to speak. Well, would that be your mother, Kelly? She asked in a cold tone. You could hear the gasps as Kelly realized her mother had heard everything. Oh, God help me, is that you, Mom? You better pray for help, my dear, because you've made sure that no one else could. I could hear Kelly sobbing as she felt her world crumble. Mom, I'm so sorry. Shut up, Kelly, Marcy snapped softly. It's clear to me now that you're not very smart. Stop thinking for a moment, Kelly. That's what got you into trouble. From now on, all I want to hear from you is, yes, Mom. Do you understand? Mom, Kelly cried. Listen to me for once, you stubborn child. There was quiet for a minute. Then Kelly finally said, Yes, Mom. I now understood where Kelly got her sharp tongue. I felt uneasy, and she wasn't even talking to me. Marcy kept her voice steady and low. Most women scream high-pitched when they are angry, but not Marcy. She stayed calm as she continued. You have two choices, Kelly. Even you should be able to make this choice. You can hang up that phone and sit on that couch with your legs together, young lady, hands in your lap and your head down. You will wait for me to get home, and then we will talk for a long time. Marcy paused for a moment. Notice I said talk to and not talk with. Do you hear me, child? There was a long pause. Yes, Mom. Here's the second choice. If you feel you cannot handle the first choice, then you hang up the phone, get up, and walk out of my front door. And Kelly, you will take only what you have from your broken marriage to a good man. The silence was thick, and the sound of crying was everywhere. Yes, Mom. The joy in Kelly's voice was gone. Normally, I would feel sad hearing her like this, but now I will give you 30 minutes to make your choice. Even someone slow like you should be able to decide in that time. But remember this too, Kelly. A chill ran down my back, and I had to look away at Leonard, who looked very serious. I felt like something bad was about to happen as I heard Marcy continue. If you decide to leave, then you better keep walking, my dear, and don't ever come back to my house again. You'll have to take care of yourself, you foolish girl. I don't think you will last more than a few months before you end up in a bad place. Do you hear me, Kelly? As angry as I was at Kelly, I couldn't help but feel sorry for what she might face. She replied, Yes, ma'am. Good. In 30 minutes, Kelly, I hope you make the right choice, but it's your decision. Now I want you to apologize to your husband, to James, for all the trouble you have caused him, and then say goodbye." There was a long silence. "Kelly?" Marcy snapped sharply. Then I heard a gasp from the phone and then crying. "I'm sorry, James. Please forgive me. I don't know what was wrong with me. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll think about what you said and make a good choice. I promise, Mom." By the time she finished, Kelly was crying into the phone. "Say goodbye, Kelly. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, James. And I'm sorry." The call ended and I sat still, unable to look at Marcy. "I don't know what to say to you, Marcy. I loved Kelly with all my heart. She was a big part of me. When she let those bad people into her life, it felt like she was hurting me too. But she doesn't seem to care about me the same way," I said as I turned back to look at her. Marcy lifted her head. Tears fell from her eyes like rain, and she didn't even try to stop them. "You don't have to say anything, James." She sniffed and sobbed. "I think I understand. It's both the same and different for us women." Marcy looked down and started tearing her tissue into tiny pieces. "I know how I felt when my ex left me for someone else. It broke my heart that he could throw me away so easily, especially after I gave him everything. All that love and support almost broke me. I don't know what happened to her. She used to be such a nice girl. At least that's what I thought. I can't understand it." She put her hands to her face and cried. My heart hurt for this poor woman going through so much pain again, and this time it was from her own child. All I could do was shake my head. "I don't get it either, Marcy. But if it helps at all, the first 5 years were great. I just fell more in love with her. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but you know how it is. There are always little struggles to figure out who does what. That happens in any relationship." I accepted that. I wasn't looking at Marcy as I tried to peel the label off my beer bottle, feeling frustrated. Then everything seemed to shift. Kelly changed. It happened so slowly that I didn't notice it at first. Then it became something like a battle for control. Just who was in charge of the marriage? I didn't think it should be a fight. It started off as teamwork. I looked up to see if Marcy knew what I meant. Things were fine until Chadwick and Pamela Stanton showed up. 7 months ago, they came around with their group. Marcy quickly lifted her head at the mention of them, pulling out another tissue from her purse to wipe her tears. "You're kidding. Pam Stanton's last name was once something special, wasn't it?" When I nodded, she went on. "Let me guess. That bobblehead from before? What about that horrible guy, Dalton? And I suppose her other friends, Tracy and Sue Kenmore, were there too? The last names might have changed, but you got their first names right. Except for that bobblehead. You mean Elizabeth McIntyre, right? I don't know anyone named Dalton, but if it's Caroline Dalton, then that's her. I haven't seen a Tracy, but Suzanne is one of them. You seem to know them better than I do." Marcy's face changed from sad to really angry in seconds. "Damn right I know those people. I had to pull Kelly out of 10th grade and switch schools just to keep her away from the Dalton group. Carol's a piece of work, and Pam isn't much better. If I had known Kelly was hanging out with them again, I would have told you to keep her away. How long have they been back? From what I've heard, Kelly met up with Carol about a year ago. I thought she told you by the way she talked. I got the feeling you were fine with her friends." Marcy scoffed angrily. "Not a chance." Her words surprised me. I had never heard Marcy use such strong words before without feeling shy. Now I get why she locked herself in her room and didn't want to talk about what happened. "Just wait until I get home. That silly girl will regret every moment by the time I'm done with her." I was deep in thought when I spoke. I know I've mentioned them a bit, but I usually use their last names, which are different from the ones you know, so it seems like we missed that. Now that I think of it, Kelly always tried to change the subject when they came up, especially when you were around. Marcy shrugged, and I continued to tell her what I had done to save our marriage. Her face turned hard. I raised my hands to calm her. "Don't worry. I won't use the extra legal terms. She can keep what she had before the marriage, just like we agreed. I won't fight that." What Marcy said next shocked me. "Don't you dare, James. Take what is rightfully yours. If my foolish daughter signed something so obvious and then still cheated on you, she deserves everything that happens to her." Marcy relaxed a bit. "Don't worry about Kelly. I'm sure she will be home when I get there. One thing I know is that she hates being alone. My threat to not come back will make her stay and face the consequences. I'll make sure she has food. But she is going to be working hard until she gets back on her feet. I thought about how lucky I was to have good parents. If Kelly thinks it's all over and there's nothing left to say, she's wrong. Marcy stayed quiet for a bit, not saying much. Well, really, there wasn't much to say. As she was about to leave, she paused. "James, can I share how men and women think differently?" I nodded. "Any advice you have will help me understand." Marcy smiled slightly. "I've learned a few things, James. Men and women see marriage differently. I know Conroy loves me deeply. He shows it by what he does for me. When he has that spark in his eye, I know I mean everything to him. We both know that sometimes it's easy to misunderstand that. It might be true for casual partners. Women don't need that physical part as much. Our love is more about feelings, so we show it by giving ourselves to our partner. That's why I can't understand what happened with Kelly. I'm just as confused as you are, James. If she loved you like she says, she shouldn't have done what she did. I can only guess she was tricked by Carol and her friends. Maybe she wanted to relive her younger years without anyone telling her what to do." I looked up at her and nodded, thinking she was right, but I didn't say anything to Marcy because I was waiting for her to finish. "Don't judge all women by what my daughter did. We don't know what got into her, and don't blame yourself for making a bad choice either. You can study and plan all you want, but sometimes a horse just gets hurt right at the finish line. There's nothing you or anyone can do about it. Marriage is a bit like a horse race in that way." I stood up and gave her a big hug and a kiss on the cheek while she sniffled and patted my chest. "You know, your father and I argue a lot, but deep down we know it's not just our fault that our marriages didn't work out. You should be thankful you didn't end up with a bad situation like us. As you know, Conroy is my third husband and he's also Kelly's father. Your mother is your father's second wife. They are good people. I know Conroy will be hurt by this. You will find someone who loves you back too. You just have to get back in the game and keep going." "Are you hearing me, James?" I smiled and thought about how unfair it was for someone like Marcy to have a daughter like Kelly. "Yes, ma'am." Marcy smiled through her tears and patted my chest again as she turned away. "You be good and don't be a stranger. I have a wayward child to deal with." "I'll see you around," she said with a playful tone as she left. That made me think about all those mother-in-law jokes. I actually got along better with her than with her daughter. How strange is that? I went back to Leonard to share what had just happened with Marcy. I remembered the first time I met Kelly at the Melbourne Cup. Kelly and Marcy entered a fashion competition as a mother-daughter team. They won easily, and I was impressed with Kelly from the start. Marcy loves horse racing but doesn't bet much anymore since her first husband taught her a lesson. She enjoys the thrill of race day. Oh, I didn't tell you, Marcy taught me everything I know about horse racing. She is the nicest person you could ever meet. Marcy gave me a kind smile and rubbed my arm as she walked past me and out of the room. I saw Kelly come to me after the court decision was made and handed down. I thought again about it taking 6 years to build the marriage, 6 months to end it, and now 6 weeks for me to let it go. 6, 6, 6. Isn't that an unlucky number? I wasn't sure. All I really knew was that it felt very fitting. I was officially single again, and it didn't bring me any joy to see the marriage I had worked so hard to save come to an end. It didn't have to turn out this way, James. I have always loved you, and I still do. You never call me back. I was never allowed to explain what happened. I told myself she looked nice, even though she was dressed modestly. Maybe Marcy was picking out her clothes, or maybe she only let Kelly wear her more serious outfits now. Kelly only had on what she wore when I found her, and it was definitely not the same. I use wearing loosely because besides her boots, she was completely naked at the time. What was there to explain, Kelly? You cheated, lied, and disrespected me. You ruined our marriage. I know all about the Dalton gang. Your mother told me everything, so there's no mystery left. Kelly flinched when I said the name Dalton. I know we are done, James, but we need to talk things out so we can feel better and move on with our lives. Isn't it strange? When you take a step back and really look, you notice things you missed before. It seems like Kelly is trying to say sorry. But is she really? Or is there another reason for her apology? My mom said you likely wouldn't want to hear any excuses, and I'm not going to make any either. I just want to stop this. I shook my head. Your mother is right, Kelly. What could you say that would help me feel less hurt about what you did? I saw everything. You were with them. What can you say to that? Honestly, nothing. I could feel my anger flaring up again. All you want is to make yourself feel better while I suffer. Kelly, you just want to go over every awful detail. That would only make me feel sick again. Why should I let you feel better while I feel worse? Forget it, Kelly. Find another way to feel okay about yourself. I don't want to hear anything else from you. I stood there for a moment and then paused. Well, there's one question I'd like you to answer. Why? I made it clear I didn't want to go down that path, so why did you keep pushing? That's the one thing I still don't get. Why didn't you stop before it got this far? Kelly was crying as she fiddled with her mom's old purse. I honestly don't know, James. I think it became a matter of pride. You know I hate to lose. Your refusal felt like a challenge and I lost control. What Kelly said actually made sense. Tell me, Kelly, did you ever enjoy our time together? Was our love making about love, or was it just some way for you to hold the power, something you thought you should give me in return for the things I did for you? She looked at me with a puzzled expression, and I realized her view of marriage was very messed up. For Kelly, marriage was a competition where someone always loses. To her, if she won, then I had to lose. How unfair is that? Before Kelly could respond, I heard a familiar voice. Hello, stranger? I instantly recognized it. Why do women think it's okay to sneak up and surprise me? I turned around and said, Hi, Michelle. Great to see you. What brings you here? I noticed another woman standing with her, Sarah. What a nice surprise. Hello, Sarah. It's been a while. You look just as lovely as I remember. Sarah grinned. Too long, James. Way too long. You're looking good as well. I must apologize for the mix-up, but I had a job to do. I hope you understand. I smiled back. No worries, Sarah. It wasn't your fault. So did your date really stand you up, or was that a trick? Sarah turned red. Absolutely. My date stood me up, but you were kind and sweet, so I forgive you. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, and we both smiled. I was really happy to see them both again. Meanwhile, Kelly looked shocked. Who are these two women? Michelle laughed. Wow, what a loud mouth. James, what did you ever see in her? I figured this was just a joke since she shifted her focus to Kelly. Don't you recognize us, dear? Oh, right, the agency only gave our names and not our pictures. We are the women you foolishly believed your husband was with. And we have a mission. With that, she twirled around. Well, you paid a lot for the best. I must make you look like a mess, huh? Isn't it making you feel a bit sick inside? At least it might make Kelly feel better to know that she was in her mom's old clothes. I thought to myself, this must be like name-calling for women. Do you get what I'm saying? You know, what is this all about? Come on, do you want to fight? But wow, and that's not a good idea. I could see trouble brewing, and I really didn't want to jump in the middle. Have you ever tried to break up a fight? Don't do it. Trust me, you'll end up losing. They have skills that would surprise even the best fighters. So, for your own good, stay out of it. I made that mistake once and never will again. I got caught up when a girl I was dating had an argument with some other woman who thought my girl was cheating with her boyfriend. Later, I learned the other woman was right, but I didn't know that then. I don't know which one of them scratched me with her claws, but I lost my favorite shirt and ended up with marks on my shoulder that looked like waves. Waves rock, right? Oh, just look it up online. You'll see. A few of my friends have mentioned my scars over the years. When they notice them, I tell them they're from an exciting thing I did when I was younger. The guys always look impressed, but it's only half the truth. What was I supposed to say? That I got caught in a silly catfight and lost? Really? Michelle tossed her long blonde hair back onto her shoulder. That was a dumb thing to do. If I'm honest, you really need to stop being so foolish, Kelly. You're not smelling roses, sweetie. Only a fool would think of doing what you did. Kelly looked pale from Michelle's words. I thought Kelly was good at fighting back with words, but Michelle was way better, so Kelly had nothing to say. I started to feel a bit less nervous with these kids and their playtime. I chuckled. I had the same thought, Michelle. I don't know what hurt more, Kelly's betrayal or the fact that I loved and married a really silly woman. What did your mother say, Kelly? Michelle and Sarah leaned in, wanting to know. So I decided to share it, much to Kelly's embarrassment. She said, My daughter hasn't got the sense God gave a grasshopper. Right, Kelly? Those two laughed hard at Kelly's expense. But I do have to wonder, what does that say about my choices? Michelle put her hand on my arm when she finally calmed down. That didn't please Kelly either. It says that you loved and trusted her without question, which is how it should be. And that, to me, means a lot. I smiled. So how did you know I'd be here? Michelle laughed again. Have you forgotten? I work for a company that gathers information on people. I've been keeping an eye on you since our dinner. I almost met you at that bar you like to go to, but an older woman got there first. You might want to ask about her. Who was she? I raised an eyebrow when I heard about Marcy. Kelly can tell you. After all, Marcy and I were talking while you were on the phone with her, right, Kelly? Or should I say that your mom was doing all the talking and all you said was, "Yes, Mom," if I remember? Kelly hung her head, shaking as she cried. So I turned back to Michelle. So you've been watching me then? I know that sounded harsh, but honestly, I felt good about it. Michelle's shy smile was really cute. Yes or no? I heard there was new husband material getting ready to find a match, so I thought I'd get a head start. Finding good stuff to buy is tough these days. When I saw you with Marcy, I felt a slight pang of regret. I nodded, but she didn't stay long. The quick kiss on the cheek was just friendly, not anything more. Then you went back to your friend, and I thought it was best not to interrupt. It didn't seem like a good time to talk for my own reasons, so I left. Marcy wrapped her arm around Sarah's waist. That's when I decided to ask Sarah for help to show you what I can offer. If you think it might be a good idea to give me a chance. Marcy raised her eyebrows, and for a moment I was speechless. I couldn't believe what I heard. Michelle noticed my confused face and pushed even more. Sarah almost hugged me tightly for suggesting it. She smiled and gently stroked Sarah's cheek. Then, she brought her hand to her mouth but didn't lower her voice. I heard that you have a little dream, and Sarah and I could help with that. Michelle grinned wickedly, raised her eyebrow, and dragged her fingers down the side. My thoughts went blank, and I started imagining wild ideas. I really needed to adjust myself, but I couldn't do it without looking odd. So I dealt with the discomfort. What do you think, James? Are you interested? There go those eyebrows again. We'll do anything for the right guy. Sarah and I are both on board. Why was I thinking about that silly dog? Kelly stood there, shocked, watching the two women. She was pretty, no doubt, but we all knew there was no way she could compete with these two. This blonde was stepping into her space and trying to win over her James. It made Kelly look sick. Then a thought hit me. It all made sense now. While I signed a marriage certificate, she was signing for a credit card. She put her marriage on credit. Like many people know, you don't have to pay off a credit card right away. You can just make small monthly payments. What did I say about women and credit cards? I should have seen it coming. I felt like a fool for missing it before. Kelly had bought herself a husband and used favors as payment. This was messier than I thought at first. I now understood her, even if it was too late. But with this thinking, Kelly couldn't see what the problem was. Now I got it. Credit card companies don't mind if you pay just a little. In fact, they want you to. Not a good way to treat a marriage, but she's a woman, so I guess I can let some things slide. Not a lot, just a little. Now I see where I messed up in my marriage falling apart. I had unwittingly supported an idea her parents taught her. Kelly had never really worked for anything in her life. By not making her earn money when we got married, I made that belief stronger. If I had made her pay for her credit card, she might have cared more about how she used it. That was my mistake. But let me be clear, that's the only thing I'm taking blame for. That's nonsense, Kelly yelled. We all turned our heads at her outburst. That's total nonsense. Damn you, Jim. You set this up. You're paying them to say those things. No woman in her right mind would act like this. This is just to get back at me for what you did, she added. Sarah jumped in. Oh, that's rich, Kelly. You're the one who went after 2 other girls while married, and then you act shocked when the truth comes out. We know who's not in her right mind here, Kelly. What? Kelly snapped. Even Michelle and I were taken aback. Sarah smirked at them. Look it up in your dictionary. It means you're acting foolish like a 2-year-old. I see those dark roots, Kelly. You're not even a real blonde. That just makes it worse. Oh my God, here we go. This is not good. I noticed the look Kelly shot at Sarah, but then I looked over at Michelle, who seemed lost in her thoughts. I didn't really know these other women well enough to tell if they were true friends or not, but things were not looking good. If Michelle feels disrespected, this could turn into a big fight. I could feel it coming. I was looking for a place to hide. Did I mention that Sarah is a redhead? Michelle is a blonde and Kelly is a fake blonde? Now, do you see why I want to hide? At that moment, Michelle blinked a few times and finally looked at Sarah. Thanks for the kind words, sweetie. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I love you too. Sarah just smiled back. You're welcome. I feel the same way. But maybe I should have said, except for the people here. Michelle frowned as if that didn't help much. I was so relieved I started laughing to myself. Tears were rolling down my face as I raised my hands in fake defense. Honestly, Kelly, I had no idea about any of this. It didn't even occur to me. This conversation has made their offer much more appealing. I'm definitely interested in understanding the details of Michelle's plan. Michelle had just given Sarah a friendly kiss on the cheek, like a way of saying, "We'll talk about your comment later." Then she turned to Kelly. "James is right, sweetie. He didn't know we were planning this." You could almost see the steam coming from Kelly's ears. I had no idea what she was thinking, but she looked really frustrated as she struggled to catch up. "So now you are being a hypocrite. I tried to give you a chance for something more, and you kicked me out and divorced me for it. I was foolish to ever marry you." What she said next made me think she was finally going to step up and take charge of the conversation. What was that about my friends? I looked at her, confused by her words. "What are you talking about, Kelly? Is your brain still stuck at the salon?" Kelly frowned at me. "You know, 2 of our friends are in the hospital. Chad has 2 broken knees. Norm's elbow is messed up. Carol called. Pam said Ben is left for good, taking everything with him and didn't say why. Susan said Mel left 2 days after Ben, leaving her with just a few things." She looked at me sharply. "Are you telling me you don't know?" I suddenly remembered why Colin, Leonard's police friend, had asked me where I had been on 2 different occasions. When I told him where I was, he seemed okay with my answer and didn't explain what it was about. I have to admit that I wasn't thinking clearly at the time, so I didn't press for more information. I hadn't even kept track of those so-called friends. They weren't our friends, Kelly. They were yours. And with friends like that, you don't need enemies. I had nothing to do with any of it. The police already talked to me and they're satisfied. If those people were messing with you, then they probably got into trouble with others too. I really don't care what happens to them. Honestly, it's good riddance as far as I'm concerned." I glared at her. "And calling me a hypocrite? That's nonsense. I'm single now, Kelly. What I do is my choice. I told you I wasn't perfect when I was single, but I have my values. Even though you hurt me for 6 months, I've managed to keep my self-respect." I felt like I could really lose my temper with her. "Oh, and one more thing. If you see Steve and he asks about his car, tell him to go to the police impound yard. They took it from my driveway to let me get my car in my garage. If he wants it back, it'll cost him $5,000. Or it goes into the car crusher, and all he will have left is a crumpled toy car to play with." I thought to myself that it would be pretty expensive if you ask me. I bet he's really angry. Maybe he's taken out his anger on some of your friends. I was really mad that she tried to make me look like a hypocrite. Did I tell you? Yeah, I think I did. Anyway, I got a bit distracted. Forget this multitasking stuff. I went back to Michelle and Sarah. If they want to include me in a 3-way relationship, fine by me. I haven't heard anyone say that they wanted to be exclusive. This idea about you giving me my dream is nonsense. At this point, everyone seemed to step back a little from my angry speech. I listened to the call you made to that awful person, Caroline. I almost felt sick listening to it. And you were going to make things worse by sharing your bad choices with me. Kelly's face turned pale. She realized I knew a lot more than she thought. I felt my face get hot with anger. You said you were with those guys at least 2 months before I even knew about my dream. You did nothing but lie and cheat and then tried to stop me from ending things with you. When I found out about it, I saw how foolish you really were. It shocked me. I couldn't believe you would go that far. I wouldn't bet much on it, but I'm sure you planned all this just as soon as your friends showed up. I know it was you who asked me about my dreams. Now I've got to ask myself why. I'll tell you why. Just so you could be with those backstabbers without losing what you had with me. By the end of my speech, Kelly was crying and Michelle chimed in. Oh boy. And by the way, there's a man here who wants to talk to you too. I looked at Michelle and thought, what is she talking about? Did I tell you that women can do many things at once? Michelle was probably thinking about her next hair appointment. what color her drapes should be, and also calling her boss to sort out something, all while planning to get milk for her mom on the way home. The guy she was now introducing was part of all that. As for me, I just lost my train of thought. Women sure can be puzzling. Michelle nodded to a man nearby, and he stepped up to us. "Kelly! Garrett?" Kelly nodded and sniffed. "That's my maiden name. What do you want?" "Not much, ma'am. I just want to let you know that you were served." He handed her an envelope. "I think you should get a lawyer because of the action taken by Ace Investigation. They are dealing with an unpaid bill that is now more than 2 months late." Kelly looked shocked when he handed her the envelope. "Have a nice day, ma'am," he said as he walked away, whistling to himself. "I really like that guy." Kelly started to cry again. "This can't be happening," she said. She opened the letter and gasped. "I can't pay this bill. It says I owe $1,500. That can't be right. The total was $1,500, and I already paid $1,000 as a deposit. Where did that money go?" Michelle smiled and took out a check from her purse, waving it in front of Kelly before handing it back to me. I saw it was a check made out to Ace Investigation for $1,000, and it had Kelly's signature on it. Michelle said, "You're right, Kelly, but I convinced Brock not to try to cash that check. He put the full amount on your account instead. He thought that check would bounce anyway since James probably locked the account after he found out. He also said that what you tried to do was really low. Shame on you for trying to use James's money for your own benefit." Kelly was about to argue back, but Sarah jumped in first. "Michelle's right, honey. Brock is a really nice guy if you stay on his good side. But if you get on his bad side like you did, I wouldn't ask him for another job. He might just reach through the phone and come after you." We all watched in silence as Kelly's face changed from sickly to scared. Then Sarah spoke up again. "That's really low, making your husband pay for his own food." Kelly turned to me, crying, "You and that stupid prenuptial contract have made me broke. I have no money at all. I can't pay this. I have no clothes, no place to live, no car, and now no life. What am I going to do?" Her makeup was running down her face from her tears. I thought for a moment. "Don't give me that, Kelly. That is not how things should go. Remember when you talked to your mom? You won't starve, I promise. But I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes when your mom finds out. She will be very angry." I remembered what Marcy had said and took a piece of advice from her. If you don't want that option, think about the one thing you have been working on for the last year. From what I've heard, there is a job opening over on 5th and Main. Just make sure to go for your regular health checkups and use protection. You might have about 5 or 10 good years left, and you still have your things. But remember, Kelly, there will be no hero coming to save you or me." Kelly cried and stomped her feet. "This isn't fair, James. You're driving me crazy. You don't know what it's like. I wouldn't have made you sign that agreement if things were different. You can't leave me with nothing." I could see Kelly didn't want to talk things out or fix our relationship. No, she was just trying one last time to get enough money to escape the trouble her mother was going to give her. I frowned at her. "You forget, Kelly, we were married for 6 years. When it comes to being in control, you are just like your mother. I know what it's like to have someone pulling your strings all day long, so stop it already." Kelly's lawyer helped me write the agreement. He understood well what you were trying to do. He told me, "I won't be held back by your feelings for her, James." He pushed me to add that 10-year support clause because he knew you'd want to take every bit of it. I was getting angry again. We both knew you would use that clause to the limit, and I'd be paying a lot. Do you remember what you said during that call with that awful Caroline? You said, "If not, he'll pay me for 10 years while I do what I want." You have no kindness in you at all, Kelly, so don't expect any from me. With that, Kelly sank to the floor, putting her face in her hands. I took a deep breath to calm myself. "Thanks, Kelly. I'm glad we had this chat. I feel a lot better now. Yes, 2-0, I win." Okay, I was gloating a bit. Too bad for her. I opened my arms for Michelle and Sarah. "Are we ready, ladies? We have some talking to do." "Of course, James," they both said with big smiles. As we walked away, Michelle said, "Oh, by the way, Brock says no extra charge." I looked at her in surprise. She put a finger to her lips and nodded toward Kelly. She whispered, "It's not as bad as she made it sound. One person will be limping for life, and the other's sports career is done. But hey, they'll manage. The other two scared ones will be looking over their shoulders for a long time. I shook my head. Wait, one more thing. Why didn't I know about this? Michelle smiled. You know that movie Independence Day with Will Smith? I nodded. Yeah, I remember. Well, you know about plausible deniability then. Brock knew you were out on a fishing trip with your boss. I have never seen him so angry. He took a chance to talk to Kelly's group about choices and their consequences. He knew that when the police showed up at your door, you would act just like you did, without looking guilty. It seemed like it worked well. I finally got what she meant. I pulled the check from my pocket and held onto Michelle's handbag for support. I crossed out Kelly's name and signed underneath, then wrote my name on the back. I told her to thank Brock, but said I would pay my own way. I asked her to give him a kiss and hug from me and let him know I owed him more than this little check. Michelle took the check with a big grin. I'll do that. But just for you, James. No one else. Brock's not my type. As we walked away, I asked myself if I felt happy. Yes, I really did. I thanked both of them for standing up to Kelly. Still, I felt like she had won somehow. You see, with all the cooking and everything, even though I came out on top in the divorce, my self-esteem was really low. I felt like a silly dust bunny taking in everything she threw my way, and I thought she still had power over me with her lies and tricks. I managed a sad smile, and Sarah gave me a reassuring hug. When it comes to hurt feelings, women understand each other the best. The saying is true. A woman scorned can be very scary. I smiled, saying, that isn't exactly the quote, you know. Heaven has no anger like love turned to hate. Michelle rolled her eyes and said, all right, maybe we weren't scorned, but we were definitely upset about how we were treated. Both Michelle and I knew that I was still feeling the pain of Kelly's betrayal, and I wanted to see her get knocked down a peg. I started laughing and joked that they could wipe the whole ladder out from under her. Still, I was grateful. My pride made me think that I should have been the one to get back at her, not them. But really, all I wanted was to leave and forget it all. I felt a bit like a damsel in distress with the three of them as my heroes. I felt heat on my face from embarrassment. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but I thought a lot of care would help ease my hurt pride. I had never seen Kelly look so upset before. The part where she let me have my dreams crushed her completely, and I appreciated it, even if it helped her more than me. By the way, who do you like? Michelle looked at me with a playful smile. Who said it was only for her? My face showed I was confused. My mind raced with ideas, leaving me speechless while both women giggled. Home, James, and step on it. Michelle and I looked at Sarah, surprised and curious. She looked back at us. We all started laughing. Michelle smiled and sighed happily. She has the most beautiful legs I've ever seen. Then Michelle turned to me with big eyes and asked, does this mean we're friends now? I was confused. Did I mention women really seem to know things? Forget it. Sure, I guess laughing together for the last hour could mean we're friends, I said jokingly. Of course we're friends. Why did you ask? Nikki sat down next to me, resting her lovely chin on her hands and looking right into my eyes. She gave me a sultry look that was almost enchanting. Do you like what I said? I could talk about it for hours. But never mind. I have better things to do than talk to you. Go find your own fun. I grinned like a fool. I didn't care. I felt happy. James, I have to admit, for all of Kelly's problems, she really has great taste in clothes. Can I try some on? I couldn't help but laugh, thinking about how Kelly spent a lot of money on clothes that she never even wore. Sarah, you and Michelle can have fun with them. I'm just going to lay back and enjoy this moment. I feel like I could be really happy right now. Or maybe I'm already in a happy place. I might rethink my view on that happy dog I see around. From where I'm lying, he looks a bit silly, actually. Just a thought. I hope they don't go too fast and drive me crazy. Now I understand why Dad got remarried. It feels strange to me. But hey, Dad and I get along well now. He's learned a lot in the last 6 months and knows almost as much as I do. Marcy comes by our house often, and even though I don't ask, she keeps me updated on how Kelly is doing. I think she just wants to help me feel better rather than trying to get me and Kelly back together. I heard her talking to Dad when she visited while Mickey and Sarah were there. I felt a bit awkward introducing them, but Marcy smiled and shook their hands kindly. I was a bit nervous since I knew how Marcy and Dad sometimes argue. I heard Marcy say sorry for what her daughter did. Dad replied. No need to apologize, Marcy. It wasn't your fault. Plus, I think James is doing fine now. Yes, you're right, Graham. In fact, I think he's doing even better than fine. We could learn a thing or two from your son, she added. Dad looked surprised. He's managed to turn something bad into something good. Definitely impressive. I knew if they weren't laughing, they would have heard me chuckling too. I had to put my pride away for the night so I could act normal and not seem too smart. You might wonder why my dad got married again. Leonard and I have talked about this a lot. God made women, but sometimes their jokes aren't very funny. Life with loving wives can be tricky. You can love them or not, but they are hard to live with and really hard to leave behind. Plus, the law doesn't allow you to mistreat them, so that's not an option either. No matter how things go, it feels like you can't win. So I say, just go along with it and take what you can get. Be like a happy dog and be grateful to be alive. I learned that good friends are really important. For me, they are Mickey, Sarah, and now Brock, who helped me through a tough time. I appreciate Leonard, Marcy, and my dad for warning me about the tricky parts of marriage and standing by me when I needed help. I wonder if Kelly can say the same about her friends. Oh, well, that's life. I don't know French, by the way. I looked it up online. Time keeps moving, and you can't change what's already happened. No amount of praying or clever words will bring back yesterday. No tears can erase what was said. That's from a poem by Omar Khayyam. I think both of Lenny's ex-wives started affairs with other married men and lost a lot because of it. They sold their shares in Stanton Chemicals at a low price to pay for lawsuits from other upset wives. With the money from his lawsuits, James and Lenny are now the main owners of Stanton Chemicals. It's doing well, and both Michelle and Sarah work in their own department, handling customer relations. Lenny says he won't date tall women anymore, but he can't resist pretty faces. After all, he is still a guy, even if he's short. He has a new girlfriend, and he enjoys being close to her. He might have said he's done with dating, but he finds himself drawn to her. Lenny is glad that James is happy again. He's gotten better after feeling bad from his breakup. His new girlfriend is also happy because he is healthier now. Chad had to stop running to stay fit because of his knees. Instead, he just sits around and gains weight, much to Pam's annoyance. There isn't much romance in their lives anymore. Norm had to quit his fancy tennis club because he hurt his elbow. Now he struggles with hearing problems after being in the hospital. Beth, Liz, and Elizabeth didn't realize that no one was really talking to them anymore. They were busy chatting with each other and didn't notice much else. The tax office was checking Norm's tax forms from the last 10 years because there might be a problem with the people he said he supported. As for Ben and Mal, no one has seen them since. The girls don't talk to Kelly or each other anymore. Kelly chose to be alone for her own reasons. She spent hard years in a low-paying job to pay off her debts and save money to move out of her mom's house. This happened after her mom tried to make her understand some things about life. Kelly then found a small apartment to have some peace while she thought about what was important to her. Over time, Kelly finally found a husband whom she really admired. I think she did this for herself too, because I wouldn't want to get on her bad side, to be honest. Meanwhile, James married Michelle after a year of getting to know each other. They had a prenup that Mickey had picked out. With this agreement, Michelle made it clear that she didn't want to have other men in their marriage. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.